I've seen the fire in our nation's eyes when anger prowls for prey. I've heard good people draw their lines and call it holy rage. But the cross was never raised to bless the stones we throw. And if mercy leaves the house, there's something wrong down in the soul. Words ain't bullets, but they can hit the same. And once a heart turns cold enough, it forgets what grace is for. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No, no room for hate. No room for hate. You can wave a flag above it, you can quote a verse or two, you can dress it up like justice till it almost sounds like truth. But outrage ain't righteous when it changes with the side. And you can't love your neighbor treating them like they're downrange. We're all image bearers, breath of God and dust. And you don't heal a broken land by teaching it not to trust. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No room for hate. No room for hate. Drag it to the cross, lay it in the ground. Let the blood of Jesus turn the whole thing around. Truth can still be spoken, courage still can stand, but rage don't get to rule the soul of a faithful man. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place.
Let revival start where the anger breaks.
Where the anger breaks.
Let healing rise up where the hurt gives way.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
No, no room for hate.
No room for hate.
Not in Jesus' name. Oh, not in this house. Not in this heart. Not in His name. No room for hate.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny, movies were about telling great stories, and you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists, it's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more. and the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight, entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST. The future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Got a vendetta. Coffee tastes like bad decisions I ain't made yet. Boss man talking about we got her, and that means me, brother. Afraid I got a terminal case of the I don't want us. Mind checked out, heart ain't in the building. That second hand's crawling like it hates my guts. The man treating rich like it's a sin. Even God took a beat. So, suck it. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday. Cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't owning me. So raise them up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday. That's all I know. HR in the break room sounding like a preacher. Talking about
I know. You guys usually want me to let that one keep playing, but we've got too much show today to pack into 2 hours, and we do have a hard stop because, Weekend News Roundup is up after this one. So my name is Rick Robinson. We are live. It's Friday. Friday. You finally made it if you're working for the weekend. However, I'm going to say this again. If you're working for the weekend, you probably need to get a different job. Trust me, I speak from experience, because I know I've said this before. I'm not going to go through the whole thing again. But for most of my life, I did not have the standard banker's hours, 9 to 5 kind of thing. And then I did when I started working for OU. And it was awesome for like the first 6 months or so. And then I realized that I looked forward to Friday more than I did most of my weekend, because by Friday, I was like, the weekend's almost here. And then by the time Saturday was over, I was like, oh, crap, tomorrow's Sunday, and I got to go back to work on Monday. Anyway, so welcome into the program. We're going to do something I don't normally do, because I didn't expect this to basically take up all of my stuffs, but it kind of is. There was a speech last night. However, depending on where you get your news from, you might not have been able to see anything about it. Anyway, so again, my name is Rick Robinson. We're live. It's Friday, and we are going to be talking about the Trump speech, which happened at, I believe it was around 9 Eastern last night. I know I was working, so I kept waiting for transcripts to drop, and it took forever. But then once I started looking through it all and looking through all the different stories that have come out based on it, I was like, this is going to take most of the show. The scariest thing about this is this goes back to some of the very same things you've been hearing about on networks a lot like this one, and other networks that have tried to tell you that there were some shenanigans, I said what I said, regarding the 2024 elections.
I swear to God, I'll pistol whip the next guy that says shenanigans.
I don't care. Bring it on, Fed boy. Anyway, so again, welcome in, friends. I may not have very many friends after this show. Today, we're going to do something that apparently became controversial sometime Thursday afternoon. We're going to let you hear what the President of the United States said. Then we're going to look at the documentation he says supports what he claims. And then we're going to separate what those documents establish from what they merely allege and what they still leave unanswered. That should not be a radical format. It should be the minimum standard for covering a presidential address about the security of American elections. Before we go too much further into this, I want to let you know exactly how unsecure American elections are right now. So some of you, fat kid, I heard it, may have heard that Olive Garden is bringing back their Pasta Pass. Have you looked at the fine print on what is required to be able to use your Pasta Pass that you pay for at Olive Garden? One, it has to be the person using the pass, the name has to match on the pass, and they have to be able to show proof of ID that their name matches on the pass to be able to get pasta that you have paid for the right to be able to purchase. But showing ID and proving citizenship is too hard in American elections. Now, that's my first gut reaction to all of this. But then NBC and ABC declined to carry the speech on their main broadcast networks. CNN declined to carry it on its cable channel. They made digital or streaming access available, and CBS aired most of the address before even they eventually cut away to fact check it. So this was not a total information blackout, but I will say this: if your entire claim is that he's a lying liar who lies, then put him on camera and let everybody see the lying liar who lies, and then prove that he's lying, complete with receipts. The problem is they can't ever seem to do that. So after all of this, again, CBS aired most of it before even they cut away to fact check. So again, this wasn't a total information blackout, but several of the largest news organizations in America did decide that a presidential address about newly declassified intelligence did not deserve uninterrupted space on their platforms where most of their traditional audience would expect to find it. That is part of the story, but it's not the whole story. The larger story is what President Trump said, what the government released, and whether the American people were given an honest account of the vulnerabilities in their election system during and after the 2020 election. Let me tell you what this show is not going to do. We're not going to take the existence of vulnerability and automatically declare that an election result was changed. We are not going to take raw intelligence report and upgraded into proven fact because it supports our politics. We're not going to turn away a suspicious voter registration application and take that into a counted ballot. And we're not going to pretend that the phrase most secure election in history answered every legitimate question people had. Two things can be true at once. Vulnerable does not necessarily mean altered, but not altered is no excuse to leave it vulnerable. And that's the part that nobody's talking about. Donald Trump wasn't just talking about the 2020 election. Yes, even most of the Republicans now today are like, can we just stop talking about this? It's over. We know what happened, and a lot of us do. We've been in trouble for trying to tell you what happened. We've been demonetized. We've been deboosted. At some point, we've even been thrown into what I now call Camp X-Ray since they renamed Twitter to X. And now, one of our biggest audio backbones no longer even auto shares to X, but they still share to Blue Sky. So you can't tell me that there isn't a bent going on here, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot tell me that anymore. But the thing about it is, even if not being altered doesn't necessarily mean that the election was completely compromised, the fact that there is even a shadow of a doubt should scare every single American. When is the last time you saw an election anywhere and didn't think of Iraq and the purple-fingered people? Because remember, that was the joking standard back in the day. Saddam Hussein was reelected with 99% of the vote, and all they had to do was put their thumbprint on a card with his name on it. When we have places like California that take longer than Florida took in the 2000 election to count their votes, and everybody says it's because we're trying to make sure every vote counts, and it's because we don't want to disenfranchise voters. What do you think you're actually doing when it takes 2 months to determine an election? Spencer Pratt was in the number 2 spot until the California ballot fairy showed up again. But again, we're talking about vulnerabilities, not necessarily proof that the election was stolen. I can tell you, based on what I saw the night of the election, that I am about 99% sure that there was something that went sideways. Because even the networks that were reporting it didn't keep their own word. They kept saying, because of these issues, we're going to go ahead and shut down our coverage. Counting should resume by about 8 or 9 Eastern time, and we will let you know as soon as we know what the results are. You know what happened? You know how I know? Because we called it around 1 Eastern time, which was midnight my time, around the same time that all these different districts and precincts were taking their ball and going home. And then I had to get up at 4 a.m. to start prepping for the morning show. And while I was asleep for that whole 4 hours-ish, Joe Biden somehow pulled into the lead. Not by just a little bit, but by a lot in a lot of different places. So what I want you to keep in your head today for the next 2 hours is this. This should have been a serious election security conversation. But instead, the left has made it into propaganda palooza. So I've got a lot of different clips we're going to be playing from the president today, because I want you to hear it in his words. I'm not necessarily going to be playing them in any particular order, and some of my noted scripts aren't necessarily, or my notes in my little scripted portions that I have are not necessarily going to match up with what he's talking about, because it got to be a pain and really confusing because I was pulling from multiple sources. But we're still going to play all of these so you guys can hear it, and I'm going to start with the first one that I pulled, which is way down here somewhere. So hang on, because there were a lot of them. So hang on. And these are not very long clips, so we're just going to take a second, play them, talk about them a bit, and then keep going. So hang on. I was ill-prepared for this portion of the program, not really sure why. Probably because I was up late playing on BZ's show last night. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, I think that's the one I'm looking for. I think. I also have too many tabs open, and half the time I can't remember which tabs are what. So, but I think that's the one I'm looking for. I think, and if not, we'll find it. Let's see. Yep, that was the one I was looking for. All right, so here's the first clip.
Documents cover five.
Maybe. I think I still have the site muted from when I was reading things last night. Okay. Me trying to produce my own show, take two.
Documents cover five major areas of concern. First, they show that over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files. That information includes names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data that would be needed to register to vote and engage in other nefarious activities, which is exactly what was happening. This data loss presents an unprecedented election security nightmare. The intelligence even shows that China assigned a data exploitation unit specifically to this new project. Documents cover five major areas.
I know we have rules, so I'm going to do that again because, you know, we talked about China.
China is asshole.
Okay, so look, here's the thing. Look, and again, I am no dyed in the wool kind of naive person. I understand that America has interfered in elections before. We do it all the time. So I don't have any issues technically with other countries trying to see if they can get their way here. What I have an issue with is us finding out 6 years later that China was bigly involved in trying to sway our election because they wanted Joe Biden to win and Donald Trump to lose. I wonder why that was. But now, I mean, let's look at this, and I don't even know how much of my notes I'm going to stick to today because there's just so much to talk about, and I don't know how much I'm going to be able to stay on script on it because this is all stuff that I've talked about before. We talked about this before. Look, I talked about this on BZ's show last night. Why do election certification people use words like chain of custody when they don't mean anything? You know what happens if you're in a court of law and something winds up violating or doesn't follow chain of custody? It gets tossed out. It typically becomes fruit of the poison tree because you don't know who did what with it and you can't verify whether anything was done to it or not. However, we do know, thanks to previous stories, that at least 315,000 ballots did not follow Georgia's chain of custody protocols, and they still counted them anyway. This is my problem. This is not a small thing we're talking about. Joe Biden barely won the state of Georgia. Raphael Warnock barely won his Senate race in the state of Georgia. How much of a difference would it have made if 315,000 ballots were, well, since we can't verify the chain of custody of these things, I'm sorry, they don't get to be counted. And if you don't like the fact that they don't get to be counted, maybe next time come vote in person day of. Look, this is where I'm going to break ranks with a lot of my Republican friends because I'm not a Republican, but I am a conservative. I used to call myself a libservative and conservatarian, and then I realized libertarians are retarded. So I don't really know what I want to call myself anymore. I just know this. As far as I'm concerned, there should be mail-in voting only and under very specific circumstances. If you are unable to get out of bed, if you can't go stand in line for a medical reason, you should be eligible for a mail-in ballot. If you are in the military, you should be eligible for a mail-in ballot. That's it. Other than that, make Election Day a federal holiday. It's not like we don't already have a million of them anyway. And make everybody come vote in person. Make them prove that they're a citizen before when they register to vote and to determine what party they're going to be part of. Then give them a voter ID. And I said give. If we're going to bail out corporations, we might as well at least make it possible for people to get identification so that we know for sure that they are who they say they are when they vote. we require ID for everything anymore, why the hell does it cost so much to get an ID? The problem with that is that, again, is a state issue or a local issue. It is not a federal issue. But if we're going to require federal voter identification, then there should be a fund that pays for federal voter identification that shows, yes, this person is a verified citizen. This is where they live. Their address has been verified. This is where they're allowed to vote. If you see them anywhere else, show them where to go. None of this should be this hard. The problem that I have today is here we are now 6 years after the fact, realizing or finally being told what a lot of us already knew, that we don't have secure elections, that we haven't had secure elections in years. There probably hasn't actually been a secure election for the entire time I've been alive, if not longer, because let's face it, and I've said this before, the problem with American elections is cheating has always been a feature, not a bug. The problem is everybody wants to pretend nobody cheats. You know how I know everybody cheats? Look at what's coming out with the fraud in this country. You know how I know there's huge fraud issues in this country? I live just south of a town of 675 people. There was a story that just broke earlier this week that in the last 4 years, they finally completed an audit. There were millions of dollars mishandled by the town clerk in a town of 675 people. Millions, as in at least a 1 or a 2 with 6 zeros after it. In a town of 675 people. Cheating is a feature, not a bug. We need to come to terms with that fact and start addressing it. Quit wringing our hands about it. Quit clutching our pearls over it. Well, we can't call them cheaters, Rick, because we don't know they're cheaters. We're 99% sure they are. Ballot stuffing used to be a sport in this country. It still is. We just like to pretend it's not. And the person who keeps trying to say, hey, y'all should be paying attention to this, all the politicians who don't like him and all the news networks that don't like him keep saying, yeah, no, nothing to see here. No, don't pay any attention. Nothing to see here. Just move along. Move along. The same people that used to show you camera footage of people protesting with fires raging in buildings and cars and everything else. And the reporters like, oh, it's mostly peaceful around here except for this 1 or 2 fires and blah, 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 and a riot that broke out earlier. But it's still been, I promise, it's still been mostly peaceful. How retarded do we have to be before we realize these people are lying to us? Both sides have been lying to us. Here's the thing, folks. There are no clean hands here. None. Because when the cheating works out in our favor, we love it. When the cheating don't, we're mad. I know, I'm being way too honest today. People are like, what the hell, man? Why are you trashing us too? Because sometimes we deserve it. I've said this before. COVID woke a lot of people up. I woke up earlier than most because I watched a business crumble that I spent over a decade trying to build. And it crumbled before the guy was even sworn in because everybody that had any business acumen knew exactly how bad Barack Obama was going to be for the American business community. I knew it. It's why I couldn't vote for him. I had people that were calling me a racist. You just don't want to vote for him because he's black. Up until 5 minutes ago, he was telling everybody he was white. Up until 5 minutes ago, his name was Barry. Not Barack. Barry. He was the one who leaned in. He was the one who put emphasis on the middle name every time he was giving a speech. I am Barack Hussein Obama. You were Barry Soetoro 5 minutes ago. Where the hell did Barack Hussein Obama come from? Where did that come from? Anyway, next Trump clip, because I'm going to be here all day if I don't keep these rolling.
Compounding the travesty, the second set of documents we are releasing reveals that members of the deep state, very, very famous group of people, many cases, in our intelligence agency work to actively suppress and downplay information about the extent of China's sinister election meddling, covering it up from both the president and the American people like nobody thought was possible. U.S. spy agencies began learning about the compromise of voter registration files in 2020 when they discovered that tens of millions of voter data, think of that, tens of millions of voters' data in 18 states have been bought, stolen, or hacked by China. Yet those responsible for sounding the alarm instead kept the information secret and hidden. They did not disclose to me as president or to anyone else, and to the best of our knowledge, they did not inform Congress. In fact, all they kept saying is, this is the most secure election in the history of our country, a standard, very pat line that was divvied out to say. The cover-up of this colossal security breach is even more disturbing in light of the additional information showing that China engaged in other election-related activities to undermine my first administration and our 2020 campaign. They did not want, and they just didn't want it. They fought like hell not to have it, Donald Trump, to win, and for good reason.
All right, sorry, I was ranting earlier and forgot to change back to me being on screen. So that's why BZ in the chat was like, hey, black screen, what's going on? Anyway, yeah, it's because I forgot to change back. But look, I'm probably going to be all over the place a little bit tonight or today. I'm not going to lie. Because Trump began the election portion of his address by laying out the standard he says the country ought to demand. And what he's saying we should demand is proof that the people that are voting in federal elections are allowed to vote in federal elections, that they're U.S. citizens, that they've proven that fact, that we know they are who they say they are, and that preferably they vote in person. And there's nothing extreme about that standard. When you cast a lawful vote, it should be counted accurately. When someone is not eligible to vote, that person should not ever, I repeat, ever be on the federal voter roll at all. And here's the thing. I understand that green card holders are allowed to vote in certain elections. Usually the ones that allow, are that affect their direct civic stuff, like if they want to vote in school boards because their children go to school in that area, city council elections, mayor, bond elections, things like that. But if we can't separate out those things, then I'm sorry, they shouldn't get to vote for anything. They are not a citizen here. They should have no voice. That's not a hateful thing to say. That's just an accurate thing to say. We either need to make sure that only citizens vote in our elections, or we're going to have to get even more extreme about it. Because back in the day, the only people that ever used to be allowed to vote were the ones that had actual skin in the game. They were usually people that actually owned property or were verified taxpayers or whatever the case may be. And I have to say that with the way things have gone and with the fact that we have this entire undercurrent of folks that are just sitting around with their hand out saying, please, sir, may I have some more? What are you going to give me today? Anybody remember Eddie Murphy from the 80s? I feel like the entire Democratic Party has become like the wife that he imported from Africa. Because remember how happy he was at first that he had a wife that was from another country because she wasn't an American woman. So she doted on him and she took care of him and she talked about how lovely everything was and how wonderful he was. And then the longer she was in the country, the more she became an American woman. And the whole bit eventually ended with, what have you done for me lately, Eddie? I feel like that's the entire Democratic Party today. When JFK was a Democrat, it was ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Now all the Democrats want to know is, what are you going to give me so I will vote for you? That is the least American concept I have ever heard. The least American concept I have ever heard is, what have you done for me lately? We are all supposed to be part of America, yes? That's the point, right? Those of us who are here, who are citizens, we have a right, a duty and a responsibility to actively participate in making America a better place. Not with making America a communist shithole, not with making America the new Islamic Republic of America, because hell with that noise. No, we have a responsibility, a duty to make sure that the people that are around us are taken care of to the best of our ability, not waiting for the government to do it, not demanding the government do it, but you do it, especially as a Christian. That is one of your God-given responsibilities. Jesus never said, render unto Caesar so that Caesar can do all the things that I'm telling you to do. He said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's. And he also said, I am calling you to be the hands and feet of my church that we are building together. We have abdicated so many of our responsibilities in this country, and we keep expecting to have all these nice little things that always run on autopilot. They always work. Nothing ever goes sideways. Everything's perfect. Everything's wrapped up in 43 minutes, not counting commercials. And we've got our TV dinner out of our microwave cooked in 3.5 minutes or less. And we can just sit down and just enjoy everything, and it all takes care of itself. Nobody ever has to put any work into it. You know how I know that doesn't work? Because the only reason we know what happened in the town that I'm just south of was somebody new ran for town council. That's how. And he did his level best to try to handle all of it within the council, and by going to the mayor and saying, hey, what's going on here? Why do we not know about this? Where did this money go? Where did that money go? And all he kept getting was stonewalls and threats. So eventually he reached out, and they performed, the state performed an audit. And now they found almost $2 million in money that nobody can account for from a town of 675 people. Again, that is very disheartening for somebody who tries to tell everyone that it's not as bad as you think when they just start scratching the surface with Doge. We're now finding fraud under every damn rock. We're now finding waste and abuse under every damn rock. And you know, as much as I used to love Rand Paul's Festivus rants about the waste, fraud, and abuse, he never talked about the most important ones. He talked about the ludicrous ones because those got everybody's attention, but he didn't talk about the worst ones. He didn't talk about USAID being used to force transgender studies into other people's countries. He didn't talk about countries that were basically telling us, we don't want your money anymore because we don't want to chop the penises off of our little boys just to be able to get your handouts. He never talked about any of those. But that's the thing. With all of these things, we that consider ourselves conservatives have always had this, what we consider first of all, like locally, it was always the Oklahoma standard. Then we assumed that Americans had the same kind of standard. And then we realized that it isn't true anymore. So yeah, half the country doesn't care that our elections aren't secure. Half the country prefers our elections not be secure. And you know how we know? Because two of the biggest news organizations in the country chose not to even carry the damn thing last night. That's how I know. Now, again, this isn't anything unheard of. There have been times throughout history where presidential speeches have not been carried. There was one of the supposedly less impactful speeches of Barack Obama's that didn't get carried by some of the networks either. But when you have a president saying, hey, we found proof of what I've been trying to tell you since 2020, even if you think he's lying, you should have let him say his piece and then pulled out your receipts. So Trump, during his speech last night, announced that his administration was declassifying material gathered by the White House Government Transparency Task Force and the President's Intelligence Advisory Board. He said the purpose was not to weaken confidence in elections, but to earn confidence by confronting the weaknesses that were found. That is the correct principle. Confidence cannot be ordered, it has to be earned. And if government officials believe a claim is false, the answer is not to say, stop asking the question. The answer is to produce the records, explain the system, demonstrate the safeguards, and show the trail, usually involving some form of an audit. The first major claim involved China, and we played those clips earlier. And America voter information. The administration says Chinese-linked actors obtained roughly 220 million voter file records. The underlying material lists several large data sets that add up to approximately that number, but that is a record count. It's not necessarily 220 million distinct human beings. There may be overlap among the data sets. A person can appear in more than one database, in more than 1 year, or in more than one state after moving. Until the government shows us how the data sets were duplicated, the honest formulation is 220 million records, not 220 million unique American voters. But that is, in my opinion, a distinction without a difference. We're saying it because I legally have to put it that way. But what I'm saying is this: even if you cut that number in half, assume that 50% of that number was duplication, that's still 110 million Americans, potentially, even if you take into account a 50% duplication rate, which is statistically improbable to begin with. Me qualifying those numbers and telling you why it is that they shouldn't be looked at as 220 million unique American voters doesn't make the allegation harmless. Voter registration data can contain names, addresses, dates of birth, phone numbers, party affiliation, voter history, identifying numbers, and other information that can be used for targeting, influence, identity fraud, or social engineering. Some voter information is publicly attainable under state law. Some is restricted. The security questions depend on which fields were obtained from which system, by what method, and whether the collection included protected data rather than information already commercially or publicly available. Now, in one of the other clips we've played, Trump discussed which exact databases were compromised. But Trump was addressing this, raised several different questions. Which exact databases were compromised? Were they bought from brokers, scraped from public records, stolen from election systems, or hacked from vendors? Which 18 states were involved? What fields were included? How many unique people were affected? What did federal agencies first know, and when did they know it? Which state election officials were notified? What remediation followed? These are not partisan questions. Those are incident response questions. If a foreign adversary obtained enormous collection of American voter data, and it seems that they have, the public deserves an after-action report. The affected states deserve precise notifications. Congress deserves to know what the intelligence community knew and when it knew what it knew. And voters deserve more than a slogan that fits on a bumper sticker or "This was the most secure election in American history." This is where the speech moves from a foreign activity to the conduct of our own government. In one of the other clips, Trump alleged that members of the intelligence community suppressed or downplayed information about China's election-related activity. That is a very grave accusation, and we talked about this on BZ's show last night. This is one of the reasons why I think after the 4-year break, Trump came back in, and one of the first things he tried to do was get rid of tenured government employees. Because he realized what was happening. The government has its own version of the E4 mafia. And he knew there were people that were considered untouchable in a lot of these organizations that he was technically supposed to have control of as the executive. What makes what's happening right now and what we're learning right now even more scary is if you start connecting the dots, and then we're going to have to take a break because I'm long. But if you start connecting the dots, here's the problem. If you look at what the DSA platform wants to do, if they ever do manage to secure enough people to be able to do it, then the executive branch isn't going to control anything anymore. There won't even technically be an executive branch anymore. Because, and you know what they want to do? This is how I can tell you, you know how I know the Democratic Socialists are actually just commies? Because they want to fundamentally transform America. They don't want a strong, independent, and co-equal branch of government called the Supreme Court. They want it removed and replaced with something else. They want to dissolve the Senate and expand the House to form a unicameral body of legislators that are expanded in number, and they're the ones who decide who become the judges, and they're the ones who decide who becomes whatever we're going to call the president in that instance. This is the problem when you can't trust your election results. We don't know if the people that are winning in these deep blue cities and deep blue states are actually the people that people are voting for, or if somebody's fudging the numbers behind the scenes. All right. I told you guys it was going to be a long show today with a lot of data points, and I would apologize for that, but there's lots to get to. Because I have gone long, we're going to go and get the longest break of the show out of the way now, and I'll probably trim most of the rest of the breaks. May even get rid of one other than long enough to grab a sip. But we are going to do our military tribute. We're back on YouTube, so I'm not trying to get a copyright strike, so we're going to use the one we wrote. We'll be right back.
Before the oath was spoken out loud, before you stood apart from the crowd, there was a moment, quiet and clear, when you chose to stand while others stayed here. You raised your hand with a steady resolve, knowing some nights don't end when the mission's done. Not for glory, not for the pay, but for something worth more than walking away.
Only hold the line.
They carried the weight where the roads ran long, through dust and heat
When the days went on,
holding ground mile after mile, doing the work that rarely drew a smile. They stood their post when relief ran late, shoulders squared under the pull of fate.
not chasing headlines, not asking why, just staying put when others pass by. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to.
We stand watch over the deep. They kept their watch where the water turns black, miles from shore with no quick way back, measuring time by the rise and the fall, answering duty's unrelenting call. Through silent hours and endless seas, they stood their post in the cold night breeze, guarding the lanes the world depends on, so others slept and the light stayed on. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to. Simplify, Marine. We go where we're sent. We go where we're sent. They moved as one when the moment came, side by side through fire and rain. First to step where the ground was thin, not for the odds but for the ones beside them.
Trust was earned in the hard way through, every promise carried by the few. No turning back once the line was crossed.
They stood shoulder to shoulder as brothers,
Never counting the cost. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to.
Air Force,
The sky is our domain.
Air Force.
The sky is our domain.
They held their focus where seconds seem eternal, soaring between clouds and blue. Every movement measured and true, knowing what one clean moment could do.
They watch the whole while guarding the small. Every mission tied to a larger call. Calm under pressure, steady and clear, keeping the promise from far overhead.
Space Force,
We guard the dark without
they
faith,
keep their vigil
where silence reigns
beyond the weather,
beyond the rain.
watching the paths that the world relies on, long before the warning lights come on.
Cloud, no banners, no clear view,
Just constant care in a canvas full of stars,
standing the watch through the endless night, guarding the systems that keep us in light.
while the watch is kept and the lines hold fast. They're alive, still moving on the other side of that.
Empty chairs and quiet phones, long goodbyes that don't feel done.
Names we carry but never say, folded flags and debts we pay. Every service, every scar reaches farther than the uniform ever could.
Coast Guard, we come when it matters most.
They launch into storms when hope feels thin. Turning back isn't an option then. Hands reach out where the waters rise, pulling lives back from the edge of time. No headlines waiting when the call is done, just breathing restored and another life won. Every rescue, every return, a quiet promise kept in the worst conditions. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long day.
One unspoken carry through, wherever duty calls us to.
For the ones who raised the right hand high,
Swore the oath and didn't ask us why.
for the nights you stood where freedom cost.
We remember, we on, we won't forget the loss.
From the ground to the sea to the open sky, to the guardians above where the silent stars fly. Every branch, every badge, every battle scar, because you stood.
We live free,
Lord, we know.
we stand here freely.
Because others stood before us. We accept the weight of what was given and the cost that came with it. We promise to remember those who serve, those who stand watch still, and those who never came home.
And welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get back into the whole, election integrity, election fraud issue, just wanted to point out, well, it's Warthog Day here in Tehran again. I think Trump might finally be understanding that you can't reason with these people. I think. But every time I try to give him a modicum of credit, he usually proves me wrong. So I've been trying not to say anything. But this was inspired by the 5 yesterday, because I believe it was Kennedy who was on as one of the guests who was filling in for folks that have been off. I know Greg's been off for a while because he's got jury duty. booster seat and all. I don't even know how he's seeing over the jury box. Sorry, short jokes. Short jokes and Greg are kind of like peanut butter and chocolate. They just kind of go together. But yeah, so Kennedy on the 5 yesterday basically made a Groundhog Day joke about Iran, and I was like, okay, I can make a meme out of that. Because the first thing I thought of was an A-10 Warthog, and I was like, hey, I can do the whole It's Warthog Day again in Tehran. However, it's also Infrastructure Day, or Infrastructure Week, I suppose, in Iran, because we are actually starting to hit some of those pesky bridges. Apparently, we've completely isolated one of the port towns that is used to support the Strait of Hormuz, because we've blown up all the bridges leading into said town. So I don't know. Is Trump finally figuring out that these are people you can't negotiate with? I guess only time will tell. All right. So welcome back into the program. I know we're all over the place today, and I technically have to take another break again in a minute to try to stay at least somewhat on track. I think I have what? Like 3 minutes. 2 minutes. You know what? We might as well just do that now. I'm not gonna do the whole thing though, so I'm gonna do some trimming. So we're just gonna do like the normal commercials instead of the music stuff, because I just played a really long song. But let's get that break out of the way. Then we'll come back and try to get into this in earnest. The good news is, whatever I don't get to today, Weekend News Roundup is coming up right after me. So far, I know that BZ and Amy have both confirmed. I haven't heard from Brad yet. But we should have enough of a panel where anything that I don't get to on this show can be brought up in the next one. My name is Rick Robinson. This is my show. And I know they're like, dude, you just took a break. Yeah, but I am trying to work on a couple of syndication deals. So I'm trying to keep most of the show clocks as normal as possible while I work on said deals, because I never know when they're going to peek in and listen. So we'll be right back. Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name is Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny, movies were about telling great stories, and you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists, it's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more, and the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight, entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST, the future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
Not to be a backseat driver, but can you say for sure you got the best monthly payment possible on your auto loan? Could it be that you might have gotten a better deal by shopping the loan at a few places and have a lower car payment? Next time, before you go car shopping, visit Communication Federal Credit Union first. Our auto loan experts will find you a perfect loan and get you the lowest monthly payment we can. Communication Federal, your auto loan experts. Restrictions apply. Federally insured by NCUA.
In uncertain times, we could use someone to lean on. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma will stand by you with plan options to fit your budget. If you've recently lost your job, had a baby, or moved, you can still get the healthcare coverage you and your family need. Financial help may be available for those who qualify. Call 855-452-BLUE or visit hereforyouok.com to see if you're eligible to enroll. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, a division of Healthcare Service Corporation, a mutual legal reserve company.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the number one way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Long clock barking like it's got a vendetta. Coffee tastes like bad decisions I ain't made yet. Boss man talking about we got her, and that means me, brother. Afraid I got a terminal case of the I don't want us. Mind checked out, heart ain't in the building. That second hand's crawling like it hates my guts. The man treating rest like it's a sin. Even God took a beat. So, suck it. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill's still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a barstool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday, 'cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, walk away. It ain't on me.
And welcome back in. Hour one already in the books, and we've barely scratched the surface of my notes. It's going to be one of those days again. Welcome back in. I'm Rick Robinson. This is KLRNradio.com. We do this thing every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, usually at 1 p.m. Eastern-ish. Don't forget, coming up right after this, Weekend News Roundup with myself. Amy Curtis has already announced she will be joining. BZ from SHR Media will be joining. Will Brad Slager appear? Only time will tell. Welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. We got the next clip in the clip train ready to go. We kind of talked about this one a little bit already, but I want you to hear it from him, and here we go.
As the documents we are releasing show, CIA reporting explicitly stated, and I quote, in mid-2018, the Chinese Communist Party's policy was to leverage all domestic and foreign elements that were opposed to the U.S. president in an effort to reduce the U.S. president's votes and make him resign or prevent his re-election. Isn't that nice? Also, in mid-2018, China was working to influence the results of the U.S. midterm elections and later the results of the 2020 presidential election itself. Separately, in mid-2019, the Chinese government's strategy against the United States was focused on undermining domestic confidence in the U.S. president. They wanted to just make you sound like your president wasn't so hot, when actually your president has done a great job, and they did everything possible to do exactly that.
Okay, Trump. President Trump, I don't criticize you often, but please don't Bob Dole anymore. Nobody wants you to Bob Dole. Bob Dole didn't even want to Bob Dole, but he still Bob Doled. Don't do that. Just stop. Yeah, I'm kind of glad I didn't get to watch this one live, because this one would have been a tough watch live. It really would. I don't know. I know that his public energy, his rally energy is so much different. And I know they've been telling him, hey, you can't yell like you do at the rallies, but that was a tough speech. That we've only played like half the clips I have. That was a tough speech, though. But the one thing that we can take from all of this is, unlike the Russia collusion hoax that was pushed so heavily in 2015, 2016, which was basically to cover for the Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton combined CIA FBI operation to try to derail first candidate Trump, then President-elect Trump, and then transitioning to President Trump. I know transitioning means something else completely different today. Not my fault. Just saying. I didn't make it mean what everybody uses it for today. But there was a concerted effort to derail first his campaign, then his election, then his certification, then his transition. All of those things happened. We know they happened. There's a paper trail. We can see it. We know it. Not allowed to talk about it because the second you do, everybody stops listening to you and they tell you you're full of crap. BZ and I talked about this last night. We are effectively now living in two different countries. There are those of us that can look at actual factual information, process it, and realize, hey, something's broken. Then there are other people who listen to the lamestream media, or as I call them, the zombie media, because they are brainless and only do and say what they are told, as he demonstrated last night, yet again with one of those clips where you can see that all of the local affiliates all around the country were all saying the same things with different town names. But the reason I call them the zombie media is because if you listen to them long enough, you become one. And that's that's exactly what's happening. We have half the country that only gets their news from certain sources, the proven sources, and that's all they believe. They don't critically think for themselves. Most people anymore don't even read past the headlines. You know how often I have even found in sources that I try to use for this show, how often I have found headlines that are enticing so people will click on them. And then the true intent of the story is buried 2, 3, 4 paragraphs in. And it's completely different than the headline. That is insane to me. Look, I understand that I am somebody that is trying to, I'm sorry, I can't even really say trying anymore because I do make a living as a purveyor of information. However, there are a few things, even as a capitalist, that I believe never should have been considered for-profit businesses. One is banks. Banks are about security. They shouldn't be about turning a profit. I know that's a hard sell. It really is. I get that. You know somewhere else that I think should be nonprofit? Medicine. I miss the days when you could call the town doctor in, and if somebody was sick, he would take care of you and he could leave with a dozen eggs and a chicken if that's what it took. Because the funniest thing about how our medical system works right now is finding out that the spouse of one of these silver spoon up his ass DSA socialist communist sons of bitches who has hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank but is trying to tell you that he wants to be there for the working people, who wants Medicare for all, which makes it even funnier to me, is to realize that his wife, a psychologist or psychiatrist, I don't remember which, I think she's actually the one that can prescribe drugs, which is a psychiatrist, doesn't even take insurance. She's out of everyone's network. You have to pay cash to have her services. Interesting. Yes, it is a common practice in the news today called burying the lead. But again, you know, the funniest thing that I take away from all of this is realizing that the ballot fairy that we've all made fun of since 2020 probably sounded a lot like this. You've been here 4 hours, you go now. Because they have a Chinese accent. So the other thing about this that is absolutely scary is realizing that there were government officials who were tailoring the information that was being sent to the president's staff and to the president himself, usually to filter out most of the concerns about Chinese involvement and everything from the midterms to 2020. This goes back to what I've talked about a little bit on BZ's show last night and earlier in the program. There were and still are an embedded group of folks within our governmental bureaucracy, pain in the ass, way too big and bloated bullshit system that are not allowed to be fired. And even if you try to fire them, you have to show some sort of a cause that meets with whatever they decide is a valid cause. And then you still have to give them so many days for them to try to torch everything on the way out of the building. That's how broken our government is. Look, I know a lot of folks, because I am a Christian and I have a lot of folks that listen to the show that are Christian. I know a lot of you get mad with my minarchy joke in our promo. First of all, it's a joke, not a dick. Don't take it so hard. I know that's going to hurt some people's feelings too, but I'm in a mood today. The other thing is this. I sincerely, and I mean this with every fiber of my being, would like us to get back to a government that is small enough that should the need arise, we can drown it, not in a bathtub, but in a baby bathtub. There is no reason for our government to be as big and as bloated and overfunded as it is today, especially now knowing how much of your money and my money has been stolen from us under the guise of fraud, under the guise of, it doesn't matter because it's government money. And that's the thing. This has been a common thing all throughout our history. There's always this push for businesses to land government contracts. Because if you can land a government contract, you're set. You are set. You are moving on up from the east side. Seriously. And it's always been that way. And that has been a common precept in this country, that if you can land a government contract, no matter what your business is, if you can land one of those, you are set. Because then you get to write your own check. Because everybody assumes our government is an ATM with unlimited funds. You know how I know it's true? Because that's how the left treats it. You know how I know that's true? Because that's how the right treats it. The only people that are worried about the bottom line and our national deficits and our debts and everything else seem to be the people that listen to the show. And at one point in time, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and I'm not even sure they're on the same page with it anymore. We still have a lot of folks tracking down fraud. I've seen a few of the smaller fish getting brought up on charges for millions and millions and millions of dollars of fraud. Okay, so when do we start going after the bigger fish? What we're finding out from these election issues. When are we going to start bringing people up on charges for withholding information from an elected official? There has to be some sort of a criminal charge that can be brought up with that, you would think, considering the fact that it's borderline treason to not let the president know that China's meddling in our elections. Took us 6 years to find that out. Why in the hell in the information age would it take 6 years for us to find anything out? It used to take 20, 30 years for a conspiracy theory to be proven out. Now they can be proven out within 60 days. And that's with barely trying. But it takes us 6 years to realize that China, who is one of our adversaries, whether Nixon wanted us to think so or not, was meddling in our elections. So if officials change the presentation of China-related intelligence because the sourcing was weak, show us the source evaluation. If they believed another analytic line was stronger, show us the dissent. If they kept information from the president because it was politically inconvenient, identify who did it and hold them accountable. The released emails reveal a genuine internal intelligence dispute. They do not reveal a single unanimous finding that every official agreed was true and then collectively buried. That is an important legal distinction, and I'm going to have to say that a lot today. The documents appear to show a majority of mainline assessment and an alternative analysis. The alternative analysts wanted their view represented honestly rather than reduced to a straw man argument. That is what intelligence agencies are supposed to permit. Disagreement that survives the pressure to conform. The problem comes when disagreement is disguised, when policymakers are not told that a dissent exists in the first place, or when conclusions are shaped to serve a preferred political narrative. And this is where the old phrase, trust the experts, becomes retarded and rather inadequate. Which experts? Which assessments? Which confidence level? Which source? Which dissenting view? Which information was omitted? And an intelligence product is not scripture. It is a judgment assembled by human beings working with incomplete information, institutional pressure, and sometimes, and especially lately, political incentives. That does not mean every analyst is corrupt. It means oversight is not, nor has it ever been, optional. Trump also said CIA reporting described a Chinese government strategy aimed at weakening him politically. Remember a moment ago when we played the clip and he was Bob Doling? Yeah, that's the one. Using commercial relationships with large American corporations and seeking out journalists who had already written negatively about him. The released CIA note supports the existence of that reported strategy. It says China wanted Trump to lose his re-election bid, wanted to use bureaucracies, businesses, relationships to influence corporate leaders, and sought journalists who had reported negatively on Trump so they could be paid to write more negative coverage. But a reported strategy is not exactly the same thing as a completed transaction. To prove that an American journalist took Chinese government money, you need a name, a payment trail, a communication, an intermediary, a contract, or some other evidence connecting the plan to the act. The note, as released, didn't have any of that. So again, this isn't about a preponderance of evidence or proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but this is about making you understand that you can't not have reasonable doubt when you're seeing all of these different things. And we as human beings are allowed to think logically and connect dots for ourselves. I'm going to say this again. If Donald Trump had won his election in 2020, it would have been terrible. It would have been a disaster, especially because of what happened in the midterms. Now we have to wonder how many Chinese fingers were on scales in our midterms in 2018. How many Chinese fingers are going to be on scales in our midterms this year? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody? Bueller? Because we don't know. But you know what we know? There is an entire fifth column inside the Democratic Party that doesn't want to save democracy, which has been the Democratic Party's running line for the last 10 years. They want to reshape it. In the process of reshaping it, they've changed the meaning of the word because what they're actually going to do is destroy it. And people are voting for it. 100 Democrats voted against funding Israel just the other day. Not just in their continuing war efforts, but removing their funding for Iron Dome. That's not good. What's even worse for me is listening to the Vice President of the United States on the Joe Rogan Experience talking just as much trash about people within the Israeli administration. There is a time for that if it is true. During a time of conflict is not that time. And for all of the people that I have seen, both in YouTube chats and Facebook chats and X chats and other posts that have been filleting Iran and have been filleting Palestine, you need to get your heads examined, because here's the thing. Even if for some reason, some military person inside the hierarchy of Israel allowed October 7th to happen on purpose, which I'm not saying that they did or they didn't, but that's been one of the things that I have seen coming out over and over and over again. There's no way this didn't happen without the Israeli military knowing about it. Even if they did know about it, even if they suspected it, what would you think they would be able to do to stop it? And even if they suspected it, why is it okay that the other side actually did it? We're talking about people being raped and murdered at a concert, for God's sake. We went to war over people flying planes into a building. And people can't even agree in this country that that's how that happened or what it happened for. But we went to war over people flying planes into buildings. Per capita and population-wise, that was 10 times worse for Israel than our 9/11 was for us. And we have the gall to question why it is that they're tired of dealing with terrorists. Because the terrorists have gotten a free pass, first under Barack Obama, and then would have gotten one under Hillary Clinton. Luckily, we dodged that bullet. But then we got Joe Biden, who was basically Obama 3.0, because Hillary Clinton was supposed to be Obama 2.0, and they got a free pass yet again. We have watched terrorism disperse around the Western world. How do we know? Because anecdotally speaking, anybody who bows to Mecca 5 times a day in public is a terrorist. You know how I know? Because in the countries they come from, that shit's illegal. They do it here because it's a way to intimidate people. They want that call to prayer going out on public loudspeakers 5 times a day to intimidate people. Even though in Islamic countries, praying in public the way they do in Londonistan and Dearbornistan and every other stan you can think of is illegal. But they're doing it to prove to you that they are dominating you, whether you want to be dominated or not. The Islamic philosophy of public prayer serves as the same practical idea of what Jesus meant when he said, turn the other cheek. Turning the other cheek isn't about showing weakness. It's about forcing someone to treat you as an equal, because if you turn the other cheek, they can't slap you with their backhand anymore, which was common in that day and time. If they didn't see you as an equal and they slapped you, they would do it with the back of their hand. If you turn the other cheek, because of the concept of the time of, your other hand is used for not so good things, so you don't usually do anything with that one, they would have to slap you with the front of their hand. So it was about forcing them to recognize you as an equal and then see if they would still strike you. It wasn't about submission. It wasn't about weakness. It was about a passive-aggressive way of saying, I am your equal, and if you're going to strike me, you have to treat me like one. And 9 times out of 10, they wouldn't do it. But Islamists praying in public and bowing towards Mecca in public 5 times a day is the same thing. They are showing you that they are dominating you. They're showing you that your religion, your faith, whatever it may be, even if it's secular humanism, doesn't mean a damn thing to them. The only thing they care about is Islam. And at some point, if we keep importing these people, you're going to be given one option: submit or die. The problem that we have today, ladies and gentlemen, and the reason that I'm all over the place today is because we have all of this happening all at once at the same time. We have Islamic colonizers all over this country. We have Islamic colonizers all over the Western world. We have a president who up until 5 minutes ago honestly thought he could negotiate with these people. We have a vice president who's angry because Americans keep trying to say you can't negotiate with these people. Because you can't. Because in their world, if there's one of them left standing and you've hit them with everything you have and they're still there to yell Allahu Akbar, they have won. We have to come to terms with these things. We have to understand that our system is broken. But the idea of our system being broken and then it being reinvented into some sort of truly authoritarian situation, which is what the DSA wants, is not how we fix it. How we fix it is restoring American faith in our elections. That is all Donald Trump was talking about last night, was restoring American faith in elections so that we don't have the, well, our side lost, so obviously somebody cheated. You know what? If we can prove that only people that are supposed to be voting are voting, if we can prove that in the 21st century, it doesn't take us 16 weeks to count votes, then people would start trusting our elections again. And the first time you send somebody a notice that says, yes, we received your ballot, but we received it so far past election day that your vote wasn't allowed to be counted, I apologize. You know what will happen? They'll make sure their ballot gets turned in on time next time, or they won't vote at all. It's called treating people like adults. We don't do that anymore. We treat everyone as if they're children. Everyone. This is why we coddle Islamists. This is why up until 5 minutes ago we were coddling leftists. Now we're watching communists take over the Democratic Party. Some of us have been trying to tell you this was coming for 17 years. You didn't want to hear it. You didn't care. Some of you still don't care. Some of you look at everything that I say, listen to everything that I say. It goes in one ear, goes out the other, and you just go on about your daily lives. And then you hear all these people talking about, well, we're going to do this to make sure that you're safer. We're going to do this to make sure that you're safer. And eventually what you've done is you've traded every bit of freedom that you ever had for just a modicum of security that you don't even really have in the first place, because eventually if these people get their way, there won't be a Defense Department anymore or a Department of War. I don't care which one you want to call it. They want to remove it. They don't even want it to exist anymore. That is one of the precepts of our original general government. Not the federal government, not the monstrosity that it became after Lincoln, but our general government. When we were left alone, when we were basically independent democracy laboratories, and each state could form its own government and decide its own future. We need to get back to that. There were so many things that were swept up in the idea of ending slavery. There's so many other things that mattered, went beyond the wayside at the same time, all because slavery had to be gotten rid of. I don't disagree with that. The problem is we didn't get rid of it either. I mean, hell, BZ and I talked about it last night. There are people that are actively accusing Erica Kirk, of all people, of being involved in slave trading. I thought slavery was dead. It didn't die. We just changed the name. It's now human trafficking. Do I believe Erica Kirk is involved in it? Hell no. But it's a thing. It exists. We know it exists. All we did was change the name. We went to war over that. Our ancestors put on different colored uniforms over that. One of the things that historically just flabbergasts me is when and I don't know why I never realized this before, because I've always been a huge fan of history, but it never occurred to me that people going to the academies in Annapolis and the academies at the academy at West Point, they were both training Union and Confederate soldiers and naval officers at the same time. That would not even be able to happen today. I'm honestly surprised it was able to happen back then, but that would for sure not happen today. There is no gentlemanly agreements anymore. Those went out the window with the 80s Democrats. And I've talked about that before too. Gentlemanly agreements, the reason we don't have them anymore, the reason we don't trust anybody anymore, the reason it became trust but verify was because the Democrats conned Ronald Reagan into saying, hey, let's just wipe the slate clean and then we'll help you fix this immigration mess. And he did, and then they didn't. All right, I've been more yelly than I expected. So we're going to take the final break of the show to give me a chance to take a sip of something. We'll be right back.
Comes in, somebody answers. Day or night, they're already moving. Calm voices, fast hands, doing the work while the rest of the world freezes. From a headset to a truck, from a badge to a door, they don't stop to count the cost. They step in when it matters. It's not about being seen, it's about being there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. sense of the moment, keeping people alive, keeping things from getting worse. Some run toward danger, some stay behind and hold it together. Different roles, same weight, same promise to show up. When everything's on the line, they're already there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. When everything falls, they don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. This is service, this is sacrifice, this is how lives are saved. No spotlight, no applause, just showing up again and again. They're holding the line when the world goes dark. When everything's breaking, they hold their ground. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line. So we raise our voices for the ones who stand. Every voice, every badge, every helping hand. They don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. Always standing in the gap for us all. For those who run and for those who hold steady, for those who stand in the gap.
And welcome back into the It's Finally Friday edition of the Rick Robinson Show. For those of you working for the weekend, you are nearly there. It is, let's see, East Coast time. Future boys. You got about 2:30. So if you're working till 5 o'clock, you got about 2.5 left. Here in God's time zone, the only one I give a damn about, let's be honest. I'm just being honest. You got about 2.5, 3 hours. So you have 3.5 hours left. West Coast, it's still early for y'all. Sucks to be you. Hate the fact that you live in the past. Although when I lived on the West Coast, I kind of used to like it back in the day because I always felt like I got to stay up late because I'm used to being from Central Time Zone. And so when I was going to bed at 10 o'clock on the West Coast, I was like, I'm getting to stay up till midnight where I'm from. Yes, I was that kind of a kid. Anyway. All right. So just to summarize what we've been hitting on today, because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get through all of it, just being honest, because I do have a hard stop here in a little bit. But here is the summary so far. Well, I asked it to summarize one thing and then it summarized something else. So let's do this instead. So this is from a town hall article that I just saw. So the Democrats' prosecution of Donald Trump between 2022 and 2024 constituted politically motivated lawfare and require accountability. He highlights recent allegations from Senator Chuck Grassley that special counsel Jack Smith's team may have mishandled classified material and obtained messages from 44 Republican members of Congress, despite Smith's previous denials. How he's going to get away with this, though, is they didn't ask the right question. I'm just telling you, because I have a lot of friends who are attorneys, and they're like, if you want to get him on perjury, you have to ask a very specific question. They didn't ask the right one. I know, to us, it's semantics and splitting hairs, but legal crap is nuts. So Hammer commends Smith, Alvin Bragg, Fannie Willis, and others may have violated federal civil rights or conspiracy laws, although the piece in question does not establish that they have been charged with any of these offenses yet. Hammer criticizes former Attorney General Pam Bondi's unsuccessful prosecution of James, let's just call her who she was, Fox News Barbie. Anyway, Hammer criticizes former Attorney General Pam Bondi's unsuccessful prosecutions of James Comey and Letitia James, whose cases were dismissed on procedural grounds. He then endorses acting Attorney General Todd Blanche for permanent confirmation, citing Blanche's experience as a federal prosecutor, deputy attorney general, and Trump's criminal defense attorney, which made all the lefties really mad, by the way. His central argument is that Blanche personally understands the Trump prosecution, is well qualified to lead the Justice Department, and would pursue accountability against officials Hammer believes abuse the legal system for partisan purposes. And I agree with him. And I did find, while we were on break, one kind of sort of happy story in the vein of I want a government small enough to drown it in a bathtub. Apparently, the number of government employees as an exact quote, the number of federal jobs in Washington, D.C. just hit a 30-year low. That's a very good thing. Now, remember when we were talking about the whole it's Warthog Day in Tehran again? Chevron, according to Dimitri Bolt from Town Hall, has just joined the race to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. oil giant is expected to sign a major memorandum of understanding with Iraq. I don't know how I feel about these MOU things anymore, but they're apparently signing it today, joining a wave of investors pouring capital into 2 Iraqi oil fields. The goal, build infrastructure that could help move Iraqi crude without relying on the Strait of Hormuz. While the strait remains a strategic choke point and a source of serious leverage for Iran and other terrorist groups in the region, the free market is continuing to assemble its own solution, one that could render the strait increasingly obsolete. Which is not a bad thing, in my opinion. It's just not. So there are a couple of happy stories. I know I've been all over the place today. Been kind of yelly today. Some of you like it when I get yelly. I don't know. I just feel like we have been let down one too many times. And the thing about it is, look, with what I just heard from J.D. Vance the other day, I'm as upset from the things that I've heard him talk about during that podcast. I'm as upset about those things as I was when I heard Donald Trump, when he was trying to cheerlead the MOU, say, well, maybe it's okay if Iran has a few ballistic missiles and everybody else has them. Excuse me? Squeeze me, baking powder? No. This is not okay. It's just not. It's just, all of this is just terrible to me. And then it's the fact, it's look, if this was all just like, if one of these things was happening right now, I would be fine. But we have Iran, which, as I've said a million times now, should have been dealt with on January 22nd of 1981, but wasn't. We have a president finally realizing that we're staring down the barrel, pun intended, twofold pun if you think about it, of a similar situation that we found ourselves in World War II, because Japan was theologically and ideologically never going to surrender. Because again, if one of them was left standing and the entire group wasn't brought to their knees, they were never going to quit. We should have known that when they started flying planes into our boats, but it took us a minute to figure it out. The good news is, when we uncorked the sun on them not once but twice, we were the only country on the planet that could do that. As much as I love to say that Iran should have been dealt with on January 22nd, 1981, because they should have been, if we had tried to do what we should have been doing on January 22nd, 1981, there's a very good chance Russia would have tried to uncork the sun on us. Because remember, they were still commies back then. If we're being really honest, they're pretty much still commies now. They just have a lot of the free market accoutrement like China does. Because they're still just as authoritarian as they ever were. So is China. But they have all of these trappings of a freer market than they used to have. Scariest thing about Russia, and I've been saying this for a long time, is any time they have ever downsized their military, they've done it the right way. They've cut everybody from the bottom up, so that should they ever need to go to war, they can start churning people out within 6 weeks. And all of their leadership, all of their really trained people, all the ones that build up their fighting forces and everything else, they're still in place. When we do it the other way around. That is very terrible for war fighting. But something else that Pete Hegseth has pointed out that I absolutely 1,000% agree with is we haven't been in the business of war fighting since World War II. And I've explained to you why. There's a reason, and it wasn't just political correctness that we changed the Department of War to the Department of Defense. Because we became America's Team America World Police. We did it by design. And it's why we have fought everything to a standstill ever since World War II. And it's why, up until now, Donald Trump was frantically hoping he could punch the Iranians hard enough that they would want an off-ramp. We're never going to get there. There is no way to negotiate with these people, and I don't care how pissed off J.D. Vance is for hearing people like me say that. You cannot negotiate with these people. You cannot negotiate with an Islamist hardliner, and you can't really negotiate with the social Islamists either, because you have the religious ones, then you have the ones that are just, I'm Islamist because if I say I'm not, they're going to chop my head off. The problem is this idea that there's good, peaceful Muslims isn't real. There are practicing Muslims, and then there are social Muslims. The practicing Muslims want you dead. The social Muslims don't really care one way or the other. And the only reason they say they're Islamist is because if they don't, the practicing Muslims are going to end them. And we talked about this last night too. Every time, like we saw with the funeral for the Ayatollah, kill Trump, hashtag kill Trump. All these signs, people chanting death to America. And everybody in the West says, well, most of these people that are lining up saying this stuff, it's because they have to or that somebody's going to kill them. Do we know that for sure? See, that's the difference. They can look at anecdotal stuff and say, well, we know that's not true. We show them more than anecdotal evidence that something is broken within our elections. Well, that's all false. Really? That's your story and you're sticking to it, I suppose. So in hour one, we talked about a bunch of different things, and I'm going to try to get through as much of this as I can in the last few minutes. We talked about the declassification of election security and foreign interference documents, that Americans deserve elections in which interference and cheating are extremely difficult and results can be verified. That last part would be very, very nice, especially when it takes California 3 months to count elections. China allegedly obtained roughly 220 million voter file records. Again, that's not necessarily 220 million unique voters. That's just different records tied to voting information. Questions remain about which databases were compromised, what information was obtained, and how many people were affected. Intelligence described Chinese plans to influence American business leaders and journalists against Trump. The documents do not identify which journalists, if any, accepted Chinese payments. I kind of feel like we probably need to figure that out. A raw FBI report alleged a Chinese scheme involving fraudulent driver's licenses that could facilitate illegal mail votes. There's that Chinese ballot fairy again. The report was indirect and uncorroborated. It does not prove completed ballots were manufactured or counted. Internal communications contain the phrases deliberately massaged and shadow government. Those communications justify investigation, but don't necessarily, again, some of this language is for legal reasons, prove a partisan intelligence conspiracy. However, I don't know anybody on my side that gleefully talks about running some form of a shadow government. Burn bags containing government material were discovered, but their significance depends on what the contents were. Chain of custody, retention requirements, and intent. Those things were all things that were stashed during the Obama years. Intelligence officials should be called to testify about what information was edited, withheld, disputed, or presented to Trump and to Congress. So what we've been talking about so far, other than the foray into other current events, is vulnerable does not necessarily mean altered, but not altered is no excuse to leave the system vulnerable. So here's the thing. We're not saying that every election needs to be 1,000% perfect. We're saying we need to be able to trust our elections again, and we haven't been able to say that for a long time. Centralized voter databases, electronic poll books, election websites, and reporting systems may be more accessible than locally isolated tabulation equipment. We already know that too. An attack could disrupt reporting or display false preliminary results without changing certified totals. Coordinated manipulation sufficient to change a presidential result would be difficult and likely exposed by paper records and meaningful audits. But remember, in a lot of democratic cities and states now, you're not allowed to perform audits. Somebody needs to ask why. Why are audits bad? Audits should be used to compare voter verifiable paper records with electronic totals. So they should be required, and they should not merely rerun the same electronic information. Something we haven't gotten into yet was the Muskegon investigation, which uncovered apparently fraudulent voter registration applications and troubling allegations about paid quotas. We haven't talked about it today, but we've talked about it on other shows. Michigan officials say the applicants were caught before Election Day and no related fraudulent ballots were counted. But can you trust what those Michigan officials are saying is another question that nobody's asking. The slow federal investigation and decision not to prosecute still deserve a very transparent, open, and plain English explanation. DHS says preliminary matching identified more than 250,000 potential non-citizen registration in 4 states. Trump actually, during his speech, cited a total of 278,000. I saw the Blazers reported 287,000. I'm assuming they transposed numbers. However, that's only in 4 states. Where's the rest of the data? The Save America Act would require documentary citizenship proof for federal registration and photo identification for voting. The reason this has become so asinine, and I talked about this on X before I launched the show, I saw a news story the other day that Olive Garden is bringing back their Pasta Pass. Have you guys looked at the fine print of what's required to use the Pasta Pass? So first you have to purchase it. Then when they give it to you, it has your name on it. To use it, it has to be you, which means you're the only one, the named person on it is the only one who can use it. Guess how they verified that the named person is the only one using it? You have to show an ID to get pasta using a pass that you paid for. But we don't have to show ID to vote. Just saying. And despite what the left likes to say, the Save America Act, which is currently still a bill, includes alternative procedures for eligible citizens who lack standard documents or have name discrepancies to still be allowed to verify who they say they are and be allowed to vote. But the left won't tell you that part. Trump's broader mail-in ballot proposals should be discussed separately from the House-passed legislation. The RNC's Election Integrity Week of Action recruits poll workers, observers, and legal volunteers. I'm going to say this again, and this is where I differ from a lot of my friends on the right. I think there's no harm in making Election Day a national holiday. It gives everybody no excuse to go vote in person unless you are sick, traveling, on vacation, or in the military. And if you're on vacation and you know you're going to be on vacation, you damn well should have gotten your mail-in ballot as early as possible to make sure that not only is it postmarked on Election Day, but is received well before Election Day so that it can be tabulated in a timely fashion. That is your responsibility as an American adult who is choosing to vote. If you can't make sure that your ballot is received in a timely manner, then you can't bitch if your vote doesn't get counted. Because I'm so sick and tired of places like California, or as I call it, commie failure, being able to take 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks to count votes. You know, Florida tried that once in 2000. They were the laughing stock of the country for about 10 days. And then, in the words of my good friend Lou and Amish, they patched their shit. California has never been forced and or required to patch their shit. Amish actually works in California elections as a volunteer. He swears up and down that his county, the one that he works in, does it right. If they do, that's awesome. What about the rest of the counties, and why are some things so fucked up out there that it takes 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks to find out who won an election for governor? Because the other interesting thing, and I didn't think about this until I heard Trump mention it again the other day, up until he threatened to involve the attorney general, they were trying to shove the Republican out of the governor's race out there too. A funny thing is, all these news stories started breaking about how the Republican candidate for governor, and I know he's a former Fox host for some reason, his name escapes me right now. It's rare, but it does occasionally happen, was being edged out just like Spencer Pratt was. Donald Trump called up the one of the state's attorneys out there and says, we need to look into this. Within 20 minutes of him making that phone call, somebody with one of the major news channels said, oh, look, he made the runoff. I don't believe in coincidence. So how did we go from 5 minutes ago, dude was being edged out to third place, to all of a sudden he won the runoff? Now, I'm going to say this again. You should be finding a way to get involved in your elections and not just be talking trash online. If you don't trust the system where you live, then get involved in the system so that you can understand it. And then if you see things that need to be addressed or changed, find a way to address those things or change them. It's not really that hard. Now, here in Oklahoma, we don't have as much fraud as we have, as everybody else talks about, because we still use paper ballots. We don't have networked machines. There isn't any way for somebody to come in and mess with our stuff unless they come in and actually physically mess with the machines in person. Because we Scantron our ballots, we mark them, they get counted through the Scantron machine, and then they go back through and they hand count each one of the machines to make sure that the tally number matches what's in the machine and that all the votes are accurate and correct. There are ways to do this. And I get it. Oklahoma has about as many people in our entire state as is half of the people in New York City. So I'm not saying there aren't logistical reasons why sometimes bigger states take a little bit longer to count their elections. But I'm saying in the 21st century, in the age of information, when we all have computer power in our pocket that was more powerful than we ever used to get into the moon or go to space until recently, there's no reason it should be taking 6, 7, 8 weeks to count election results. We talked about this too. NBC and ABC have apparently changed the C in their name to communist because they declined to broadcast the speech on their main networks. CNN declined to carry it on cable, but did live stream it. The networks deserve criticism for limiting live access, but Trump's threat against their license, in some circles, feels like it goes too far. I don't happen to be one of those people. Democratic leaders dismissed the address broadly, including AOC. And the irony here is, within moments of her claiming that nobody should be carrying this speech, was when NBC and ABC said, yeah, we're not gonna. You know, the only reason I think CBS did, even if they did eventually cut away for fact checking, Barry Weiss. That's why. Elections should be secure enough to resist tampering, transparent enough to expose any tampering, and audible enough to prove that the results are valid. That's all we are asking for. Again, the problem we have in this country, though, is cheating has always been a feature, not a bug. And apparently that's true almost everywhere. You know, I thought we outgrew that part of ourselves, but apparently we have not. Because again, one of the coolest small towns I've ever seen, one that looks like a freaking holiday card in every holiday season, just found out there's $2 million that nobody can really account for, that it was used to make mortgage payments for the town clerk, take their dog to the vet, do all these other different things. $2 million in a very small town. That's a lot of money. That's a very lot of money. Okay, so I don't know. I probably won't go into that one because I have a feeling Amy's probably going to want to talk about that one. But I will talk about this real quick because it kind of dovetails into everything that we're talking about. Then we're going to go ahead and get ready to make the changeover for the next show. For those of you who don't know, we do back-to-back shows on Fridays. Up until now, I had been trying to do separate feeds because it was supposed to make my life easier. But it's a pain in the butt, so I'm just going to keep the feed live. However, this is from Ward Clark, and I really hope this is true. So, according to him, Iran is in the process of having its military teeth kicked in, which we know, which is presenting the remains of Iran's civil government and its military with an existential problem. But it's not the only existential problem facing the 7th century barbarians running around right now. The population has been growing more and more restive and more unhappy about living under the iron sandals of the mullahs. Now we can put some numbers to the discontent in the form of a leaked survey of Iranian people. Here's the interesting bit. The survey was commissioned by the Iranian government themselves. A leaked confidential survey by the Iranian Students Polling Agency, otherwise known as the ISPA, has revealed a staggering level of public discontent inside of Iran, with nearly 92% of respondents expressing dissatisfaction with the country's current state. The report, first disclosed by Riyadh 24 on November 12, shows an unprecedented collapse in public trust towards the ruling establishment. According to the outlet, the findings go far beyond criticism of the government itself. They reflect the public's broader perception of the ruling system. The data underscores a growing crisis of legitimacy that has shaken the foundations of the clerical regime. Over the past year, Iran has been gripped by worsening economic collapse, systemic human rights abuses, brutal crackdowns, and deepening environmental disasters. From severe water shortages and power cuts to record air pollution. I think Canada may have just entered the chat on that one, though. Together, these crises have fueled nationwide anger and resentment, leaving the regime more isolated than ever. One expert on the region had some thoughts they gave to Fox News Digital. A senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies told Fox News Digital that the report should prompt a fresh assessment of the potential for political upheaval inside of Iran. If anything, this research understates the depth of Iranians' rage, Maliki said, and it's what makes it remarkable. Even a survey prepared for the regime's own president by its own pollsters records anger levels above 63%, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. So it kind of feels like maybe, just maybe, they're about to hit a tipping point. I don't really know. I guess we'll find out. I think we have a Brad and a BZ. I don't see an Amy yet. Surprised to see a Brad, though. I hadn't heard from him. So, yay. All right, so we're going to get out of here. For those of you listening live, it's going to sound weird for a second. We're going to play the outro. Then we're going to do a quick sound check. Then I'm going to roll commercials. And for those of you listening later, you won't even know what the hell I'm talking about right now. But it's just how we roll around here. So again, my name is Rick Robinson. Happy Friday. Hang out for Weekend News Roundup coming up in just a minute. Bye, everybody. Except for those of you hanging out for the Weekend News Roundup, because I'm actually coming right back. I know it's weird and confusing, but whatever. So is life. Have you seen life lately? Say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I have a clean cut point for the rebroadcast later. Bringing over BZ first, and then Brad.
Wait, I see Brad first.
Check real quick. I think I can get you guys in here.
That's so wrong.
I get that all the time.
All 6'5" of him. I measured him when he was asleep last night.
Gotta be now, but we gotta do the show non-video because he's floating head these days. We'll get that sorted out one of these days.
Disembodied human. There's a non-disembodied human.
Where did he go?
Where did he go?
Wait, he's
Son
not. Why did it not show him? He's there. I can even see him trying to talk, but that's probably my
I
fault.
can hear him if you can hear me.
I can hear you now. I had the feed faded down, so yeah. None of this will be in post, so it's cool. But I'm trying to figure out why I can't.
My disembodied head, but you can't even hear me.
I can hear you now.
I can hear you. I just can't see
I don't
you.
know why.
Hey, Brad.
That's so wrong on its face. Anybody's face. A marmot's face. A Hyrax's face.
Oh, there we go. All right. I had to pull the old lady glasses out today.
It's weird. Hang on, BZ. Let me try bringing you back in again. Maybe it's glitching.
All right.
No, that's weird. It's not showing him at all.
Weird. It is weird. I am weird. He, she, and it are weird.
You are in the right spot for weird, though, my friend, because it doesn't get much weirder than this.
Conjugate everything.
This is true. This is true.
I had to know my Latin conjugations. Ami, ama, amat.
I wish they would have taught us Latin.
Okay, here's the weird thing. They didn't teach me.
I learned some of it on my own. Hey, I figured it out. It actually turned it back off again.
For
actually,
it. Look,
it's
the floating head. The floating head.
The floating head
of fluff. Doom.
All right, let's get ready to do this damn thing.
Run a disclaimer if you're going to be talking like that.
Falsa doom.
All right, here we go. Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny, movies were about telling great stories, and you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists, it's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more, and the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight, entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST, the future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
And welcome in to the Weekend News Roundup. I am one of your hosts, Rick Robinson, joined by some of my usual cohorts on Fridays. I didn't realize my hat's kind of crooked. I don't know why. Bugging me now. Anyway, so I'm here with, first we'll start with ladies first. Amy Curtis. How you doing, ma'am? How's things?
Things are good. Lady may be a stretch some days, but things are good. Canada's killing our summer, but things are good.
I mean, doesn't Canada always kill your summer, though?
That's very, very true.
I mean,
but yeah, the air quality is poor. It's hazy as hell outside. Oh, and after we're done here, I get to go see the Odyssey because I'm going to write a review for Town Hall tomorrow. So watch for that. BZ's laughing. Hey, like I said in the chat, my theater has a bar, so I win, and I don't plan on doing this sober.
My bar has a theater.
One of the guys on Fox was like talking it up like it was awesome, and I'm like, you are just nuts. Anyway, all right.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Damn it, Andrew. I do need a producer, but that would require a budget. I don't have one of those yet. And then we are joined by none other than Brad Slager, also a contributor for both Town Hall, Red State, and here at KLRM Radio. How you doing, man? How's things?
Things are busy. We're, it's been media mayhem all week long because they can't help themselves and I can't help covering them. So it's been enjoyable watching them flail as usual.
Fun times. And BZ, how about you? How are things?
Well, it's been so long since last I've seen you. How have you been? What have
I know.
What have you been saying? Do you have any opinions? Are we going to hear about them?
Yeah, it's been a whole 13 hours since we've actually seen each other.
That's
but yeah,
right.
No, it's forever, man. It's forever. But yeah, no, I mean, I was a little fired up on your show last night, and it carried over into today. So
I think that was glorious. I didn't just love it. I learned.
You just like hearing somebody get as mad as this stuff as you do.
Yes. For those of you just tuned in, yes.
Hey, your old new bell actually works really good.
It works better.
Which is funny because I thought he'd finally found a replacement. Turns out he actually found his old bell from SHR, and it's better than the new one that he tried to buy.
Baby.
Anyway, all right. So it's not like there's anything to talk about for the next hour or so. So where we want to go first? We're just gonna take a nap. What are we gonna do?
Oh Lord, I think we should start with Maine because that is a clown show that just got made a full-blown 3-ring circus.
Dude. One of the candidates looked like Chris Farley in drag, and I can't not unsee it now.
For me, it was Meatloaf. The Meatloaf memes were what was killing me. Yeah, that's Ashley Webb. She. It says I see. It's so easy to do that. His qualifications to be the next senator from Maine include being a songwriter and an author. By those standards, I'm halfway there to being qualified for the Senate from Wisconsin because I too have written a book, but I'm also not a very confused person. So
why
I saw somebody say that it looked like possibly Graham Plattner had shaved his beard and put on a wig.
We have not seen Graham Plattner since he dropped out.
That was
as
soon as they said that you couldn't unsee it.
Yeah, I saw that earlier too. They're like, is Graham Plattner trying to sneak back into the race and drag? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's possible.
Would that surprise any of us? No.
When we see trannies who are males, can someone not please pick a good-looking tranny to tranny? They're all ugly and obese and disgusting. Good God, people, clean up your tranny act.
I mean, I know that the circus used to have a big thing for bearded ladies. That doesn't mean I want to see them in politics.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But Maine is really scary. I can't even believe this went as far as it did with the first guy because, like, as soon as they started coming out with all this stuff, I was like, there's no way they're going to run with this guy. And everybody was like, well, people can change. And you know what the tattoo meant and this and that and this and that. And then the first abuse scandal came out. And he was like, they're like, no, that's not true. And then the next one came out and they're like, he's still my guy. And the last one came out and they're like, yeah, this is a bridge too far.
It wasn't the fact that he was credibly accused of rape. Yeah, Lindsay Fifield's accusations, they dismissed her because she's a Republican. What's his face? Sheldon Whitehouse. This was a Koch brothers operation. Believe all women. Okay. No, they looked at the polls because like right before this other story dropped, I saw that he was losing working class voters like by 20 points to Susan Collins. That's why they dropped him from the race. If he was winning, if he was winning, they would have thrown I'm going to mispronounce his name and I apologize. Jenny Raxicourt, this last accuser, under the bus too. Didn't matter that she's a Democrat operative, that she shares Graham Plattner's politics, that she herself almost didn't come forward because she wanted him to win the race, which is a whole nother can of worms. We'll get into it another time. But he was losing the race, just like they would have been happy to give Joe Biden 4 more years of drooling into a cup while his little progressive staffers ran the country. They only kicked him out of the race because they were going to lose in a very undemocratic fashion, mind you, because now the voters in Maine spoke. They wanted Graham Plattner. The Democratic Party didn't. And this is part of a bigger and alarming pattern of very anti-democratic behavior on the part of the Democratic Party, which is a topic we'll get into at another time too. I wrote about it though for Town Hall, so go join VIP and you can read my thoughts there. But what an absolute clown show. And at the risk of counting our chickens before they hatch, I want to say congratulations to Senator Susan Collins on her re-election because she's going to win by 8.
They got a new wrinkle on this whole thing too, as far as what may have finally pushed him out. The polling is why he was going to drop, but he was giving this posture like, I'm not stepping down, screw the Democrats. He's going to stretch it out to the Monday deadline and such. I'm kind of looking into this. I might cover it tomorrow if I find more, but it looks like there's an investigation in Maine regarding Medicare fraud and his wife.
Oh, okay.
It's starting to sound like, when he started puffing out his chest and you can't get rid of me. I was like, well, we got some documents here regarding your bride that show ... And he was the one that came out, a week or two ago and said, oh, there's no Medicaid fraud in this state. This is all cooked up by the Republicans. Well, we got documents with your wife's name on it and your home address.
Right. Which, if those reports are true, kind of surprised he didn't throw her under the bus because treating women like crap is his modus operandi. So she must.
Well, I've already said when he was stepping down, there's going to be an over-under on whether or not their marriage lasts to the end of the year. Just because of everything he's done that she can't tolerate and how much he doesn't seem to favor marriage himself. So I don't see much motivation for her sticking
I don't
around.
know. It'll probably last a while. He'll just shove her in a room and shut the door till she goes to sleep. So. Oh wait, did I say that out loud? My bad.
Or let that happen in a car in a closed garage.
That's on you. That's all you, BZ. But I don't see how it can't happen. Like I genuinely don't, because he's humiliated her. He's admitted to cheating on her. She put out that video that could have been a hostage tape. I genuinely feel sorry for her because I can't imagine being in a relationship with that man, but that's just me.
Well, it was the remarkable aspect of it all too when his former campaign manager, she quit the campaign last October because she realized what a dumpster fire the guy is. But she was also the one that revealed in, I think it was April, that the text messages were on the phone and those existed after his marriage, which completely contradicted the current narrative they had going for him. And everybody turned on the woman that was revealing this. She was the problem, not Plattner. That was the amazing aspect of it. So let me see. The guy's lied entirely about his biography. Now he lied about, there's no more scandals. He's lied about all these sexting issues were in my past. That all gets revealed. And everybody said, how dare this woman come forward with this information?
Right.
And now she's been completely exonerated because, oh, look at that. We have rape and worse things than the texting.
Exactly. Which absolutely proves my point that the scandals weren't what kicked him out. The fact he was going to lose was. They knew he was a complete shitbag in October. Still ran with the guy.
Same with Bernie Sanders. Why did Biden get installed? Biden got installed because Sanders wanted to destroy the flow of cash, and the spice must flow. Well, we need to get this bald communist out of here.
And look where it got them. There's a whole insurgence now of Democratic socialists who are just itching to proverbially and maybe literally line the old guard Democrats up against the wall and get them out of office.
Yeah, well,
they just went after Jared Polis.
they're going to line him up against the wall already. So, Brad, your work wife says she'll stick with him because he's wealthy. So.
maybe, but money, depending on how, like money can go away. Like money can disappear, and then what's left? But that's a possibility.
The other thing is, how wealthy are you, and other than your parents' money, when your mom was your only customer? Because I bet you that's probably going to be going away soon.
What it is, it's all his parents propping him up in the basement because it was even revealed. I think the Washington Free Beacon was the one that did. They looked into the numbers of his oyster business, and even that was a sham. Like he doesn't have enough revenue to generate an actual income from it. It's his mom's restaurants, and that's it. And his business partner is this hyper exclusive elitist guy from school. And basically they just, pocket government kickbacks and stuff like that. It's not a viable business.
Right. And he's also on disability through the VA. Which fine, he probably deserves it for his service, but come on, this guy had issues, red flags from the start.
Well, he's not exactly driving around in the Lamborghini and such. I mean, he's probably considered main rich, and that's primarily from mom and dad.
Well, Lamborghinis are reserved for muzzies in Minnesota, aren't they?
Yep. Which they don't do well in the cold.
Drug runners down on South Beach.
That
Can't go down there without kicking through a couple of gold wing doors, smacking you in the chin all the
Plus,
time.
isn't that kind of shades of Katie Wilson too?
Yes.
I don't.
In Seattle, she is.
Besides, everybody knows Lamborghinis are like 80s and 90s. It's all about the Bugattis now, bro.
The Bugatti, whatever. I won the lottery tonight. I wouldn't buy a Lamborghini, Bugatti, any of that. Give me my Honda Accord. I love my little Honda. I'm not a fancy car girl. I'm just not. But the funny thing with this whole Maine disaster is they're doing this to oust or try to oust Susan Collins, probably the most moderate, milquetoast, light Republican you're ever going to want to meet, who voted in the first to impeach Trump after January 6th.
You're being
very nice.
I'm being kind. I am being very nice because I want Susan. I want the Republicans to hold on to the Senate. I want to hold on to Susan Collins. I want Collins to hold on to that seat. Do I wish she was more of a Republican? Absolutely. But I would vote for her if I lived in Maine because she's better than the alternative. But this notion that she is this MAGA fascist who bends the knee to Trump is comical. Absolutely comical. She votes with any other Republican except I think it was, I want to say Lisa Murkowski, but don't quote me on that one. But
I'd guess
she's
Murkowski.
bipartisan. You see, and Aggie said the same thing. They nuked the entire Democrat Party in Maine for Susan Collins. Like, guys, get some perspective.
They don't have any perspective anymore. That's the problem.
No, they are so addled by Trump derangement syndrome that it's actually like eating at their brains. And I don't get it. And I say that as somebody who opposed Trump in 2016. But after he won, it was like, fine, 4 years of Trump. Do not allow that man to live rent-free in your head. He will be gone in 2029. And you will have to live with the misery that you inflicted on yourself. Well,
will he really?
Yeah.
No, I'm just playing. Yeah, I don't know. After hearing JD Vance on the Joe Rogan Experience this week, I'm like, I really hope somebody else besides him tries to run because I don't like. I know JD Vance has been somebody who's been trying to find himself for a while, and he's been all over the place. But the problem that I have right now is if I wanted to hear Bernie Sanders' economic policies, I would listen to Bernie Sanders. I don't need to hear them from the Republican vice president of the United States.
Right. And if I wanted to hear the Democrats' anti-Israel stance, I'd go to the Democrats. I know do I like Vance as a person as much as I know him? Yes. Do I like that he's a younger face in the White House? Absolutely. He's younger than me, and I won't hold that against him. But if we have to talk about and look forward to 2028, I'm all in on Rubio, especially after his speech about communism and left-wing violence, and then his order to restrict visas for these left-wing terrorists that want to come to the nation. Presidential material there.
Well, the other thing that I love about Rubio,
Rubio would be.
Go ahead.
He'd be a slam dunk. Absolutely. I mean, he's leadership and everything else. I mean, he's got the bona fides. He's done everything pretty much that you'd expect from a leader, and I don't see how you could say no to him.
Well, the thing that I love about Rubio is the fact that he's basically done all of the cabinet position jobs now, so he knows everything a president would need to know. And that's the one thing that for me, as somebody who's always eventually, usually up until this last job change, gravitated towards management. And they asked me when I applied to go to work for OU, they're like, with your resume, why didn't you apply for one of our management positions? We could have trained you. And I'm like, because I don't know how to do the job yet. How am I supposed to coach somebody to do the job if I haven't done the job? And that's how I've always been. It's always start at the bottom, work your way up, because then by the time you get there, you know how to make sure people are good at their jobs. And that's one of the things that I like about Rubio is, one, he's come a long way from his early days. He has grown so much. And then the other thing is just realizing that, and I don't know if maybe Trump already has kind of trepidations when it comes to Vance, and that's why he's been leaning on Rubio so much. And because you've already heard him make some of the jokes, well, if this goes sideways, I'll just blame JD. That's not a joke. Let's be honest. That's Trump trying to be funny, but it's not a joke. Because Trump doesn't joke like that. He's serious. If it goes sideways, it's on him, not me. That's just Trump.
I can remember what my dad.
The thing with Rubio too is that he can elucidate policy like pretty much nobody else, including Trump in the administration. I mean, anytime he gets supposedly pinned down by reporters, or if he's at the White House press room, he can explain things in a fashion that you can't refute because he just delivers the facts, but in such a way that it just sounds like common sense, and all the talking points evaporate as soon as he lays them out. I don't know how you could fight that back. That's kind of amazing to watch. He's not hyper political. He is just no nonsense, pragmatic. This is why we're doing it, and this is why it's happening. And then afterwards, you're like, okay, then. And the media is usually lockjawed as a result. It's beautiful to watch.
But yeah, he's rope-a-doped them more than once lately, which has been beautiful. But okay, so where we want to go next? Because like I said, it's not like there's anything we should be talking about anyway. So I don't know why we're bothering to do a show today. Anybody watch that speech last night?
Yeah, and I gotta say, he has some good points. I set that bar. My expectations were very, very low because I kind of know Trump after a decade in office. The speed, there's some substance there too. We need to pay attention to what China's doing with our elections, because I've been saying for years things like TikTok, that's all a big psyop to undermine us domestically, and people are just kind of whatever. Like, I'm a very lenient mother when it comes to technology in a lot of ways. TikTok was the one thing I said it's not allowed on any of the phones. You guys are not allowed to go on TikTok ever. And they listened to me because of not because of the China's got your data. Everybody, you breathe, the first breath you take and your data is everywhere. But because
almost everybody's iPhone is made in China, so there's no way they're not getting our data regardless.
Right, but the psyops on that social media, like the agenda stuff that China pushes that they don't allow on their social media sites in their own country, no. And so I think there's something there. He's just a very bad messenger of these big things. Like, he needed to have a very carefully laid out speech written by somebody, maybe even delivered by somebody else. And then here's the data that we've got. Look at it, because there is some stuff there that we need to be concerned about. And somebody, and I wrote about it this afternoon for Town Hall, it'll publish later, 20 minutes of the Democrats going, yeah, our elections are connected to the internet and they're easily hackable. And now all of a sudden Trump says it. No, he's got no evidence. He's got no proof. AOC said the network shouldn't carry his speech. He's the president of the United States. The media doesn't get to decide what we get to see, what he says. Well, it's not honest. Okay, fine. Then refute it. If it's that dishonest, it should be very easy to refute it and not, oh, I'm not going to run his speech because he's lying. Say the people who tell us COVID came from a wet market, that the vaccine worked, that, a laundry list of things. Okay.
Well, the thing was, they were calling it a lie before he spoke. They were refuting the documents that they didn't see yet. I mean, that was the amazing part last night. I watched CBS come out, and even Brian Stelter was applauding him. They pre-bunked the speech. It's like, you dumbass. That's
Right. They're
lying
so
right there on its face. And then ABC said, we're not going to run it because we don't trust him, and we're not going to waste our time. The second he got done, there's Mary Bruce on camera. Let's tell you what he said. How about letting me listen to what he said?
Right. Because you might not think the way the media want you to think, and that's the problem.
Well, I have a block list of journalists that'll tell you that's always been the problem. They hate when I challenge them or ask them questions about stuff.
So speaking of election integrity, did you guys see the post from Riley Gaines earlier today where she said we should put the Olive Garden CEO in charge of the Senate?
I did not see that. Free bread
So
sticks
yeah,
for everyone.
well, it's all tied to their pasta pass thing, because there was somebody when they made the announcement that asked a kind of a question that I think was relevant. Is this just for me if I get it, or can I use it to get pasta from my family? Their answer was a very firm no. And then there's lots of fine print. The never-ending pasta pass is only for use by the pass holder whose name is actually printed on the pass. Passes are personalized and non-transferable. And to use the pass holders must present a valid photo ID along with the pass at time of ordering. So you have to show an ID to use a pasta pass that you paid $100 for that's only good for 13 weeks, but you don't have to show ID to vote.
I don't think I could eat that much pasta in 13 weeks, but it's sad that Olive Garden has better election security than the federal government.
I just thought it was funny when Riley Gaines was like, Olive Garden CEO for Senate Majority Leader now. I was like, okay, that's awesome.
Well, I think Babylon B was the one that said how many black people are now disenfranchised because the Obama library requires photo ID.
Right? I thought about that too. I was like, it's free to get in, but you have to show an ID. Isn't that disenfranchisement?
Is it free to get in? I thought they were charging on top of making you show an ID.
Well, it was supposed to be free. I think now that they have a red bottom line, I don't think it's free anymore, but it was supposed to be free originally. So this is another one of my favorite ones from Haley Corona. If I give birth at an Olive Garden location, is my baby entitled to a never-ending pasta pass?
The Supreme Court says yes.
Anchor breadsticks.
Breadstick babies. Anyway, no, sorry. With as much as the news cycle has been crazy lately, finding funny stuff like that to talk about once in a while, it makes me feel a little bit better. Because I've been you can ask BZ. I was feisty last night. I was feisty today. I'm still feisty right now because granted, Trump was a lot more subdued than I have seen him, and I know it's because he knows he's in front of a camera by himself and he's not preaching or shouting to a rally or anything. But I said this on my show today. I'm really glad that I was working during that speech because pulling the clips from it was really, really tough. The few that I wanted to talk about, I was just like, this reminded in some ways this reminded me of a Biden speech. And I get it, they're around the same age, but it's actually starting to show up a little bit for Trump. Not as bad as it is for Biden, but I can see that he's starting to lose a step. He can still use steps and he can still walk and chew gum, but he is officially losing a step. But then again, he's like 80 and he gets around better than I do, and I'm only 53. So
yeah, he turned 80 June 14th because he was born 2 days after my dad. My dad would have been 80 in June. So
I just feel better if he got a full 8 hours. Because this guy's
never
always
sleeps.
on the go. He's texting at 2:00 in the morning, and then he's right up at 6. I mean, he keeps my hours. And
dude,
I'm not.
I've said that before. I love the first year that I decided to start doing this full time. It was so easy because Joe Biden was calling lids by 9 a.m. He was going to be done by 11 and in bed with his tapioca or pudding or whatever, and it was really easy to do my job. I cannot keep up with this man, and I keep the same kind of schedule he does. I mean, and you've got even his press goggles complaining constantly. They're like, he's coming to talk to us at 2, 3 in the morning when we're on the plane flying to other places, and we're thinking, hey, we finally get an hour or two to take a nap. No, he's got a second wind and wants to come talk to us some more, which is hilarious when you think about it, because like him or not, he is the most press-friendly president I think we've ever had in history, other than whichever one it was that started the radio fireside chats.
That was FDR, wasn't it?
FDR.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was FDR. Just couldn't think of it for the moment. But yeah, I'm just like, he's always talking to people.
Right.
Always.
Right. And to could be wrong, that is who he likes the attention. He likes to be out there. He likes his name in the press. But yes, you're absolutely right. He is press accessible. Biden, he would walk away. He wasn't allowed to take questions.
Most of the time, they'd be leading him away by the hand. Hey, Denny, was it an HR meeting? Asking for a friend. Just kidding. Just kidding. But no, I mean, and dude, I mean, there's just been so much in the news. I mean, and I know some folks that are more staunchly conservative than even I am kind of gave me some grief over talking nice about Lindsey Graham earlier in the week. But there were things that I didn't know. Because I usually pay attention to politics. I didn't ever really pay attention to his personal life. I don't know very many people that age 19 or 20 that would say, I'm adopting my sister so she gets military benefits since my parents died.
Right.
At that age, I don't know very many people that would do that.
No.
That was kind of a big deal for me.
Yeah, I think Lindsey Graham was a fundamentally decent man who I didn't always see eye to eye with on politics, but from everything I've read and everything that people who knew him said, you could tell him to his face that you thought his politics were bullshit, and he'd still be your friend. And that's that's the hallmark. Yeah, that is the hallmark of a decent man, and it's a big loss. Like, I was genuinely shocked when I woke up at like 4 a.m. Speaking of insane, ungodly hours on Sunday and saw that he had died. I thought it was a joke. I was expecting to get the Mitch McConnell death notification first, not the Lindsey Graham one. And it's just one of those things. He got taken out by the same thing that took out John Ritter. So.
Yeah. The funny thing is realizing that the angel of death is sitting there shaking the magic 8 ball. Is George Soros even in this damn thing? Am I ever going to get him?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, no, I mean, look, and again, tongue in cheek completely. I mean, it's hard for me to look anybody in the eye or see eye to eye with anybody all the time, depending on how I'm looking at you. Just saying. But
I'm not laughing at that.
Go ahead. I laugh at it all the time. But no, I mean, but that's my point. So I'm used to things like that. And I like the fact that, even if he was even more hawkish than I am, when it comes to Iran, we needed to be hawkish. We should have been being hawkish the entire time. When they started flying planes into the sides of buildings, we should have been focusing on Iran. Because that's where the money started, no matter what. Was them. That's where our focus should have been a long time ago. And I've said this before. I'm glad that the president's finally realizing that these are not people that you can negotiate in good faith with. We'll see how long he holds that opinion, because he doesn't change that one quite often. But I've said this before. January 22nd, 1981. Those folks should have been dealt with. The only reason we didn't was because we were afraid Russia would uncork the sun on us if we did.
Absolutely. No, the way you deal with the Iranian regime is you put them 6 feet under. And you bring in a regime that you can actually work with and negotiate with, because like their whole worldview is they want to bring about the end of the world and this Islamic apocalypse, because that's what their religion teaches, and they are zealots, and they will do whatever it takes to get to that goal. They will lie, they will steal, they will cheat. They want a nuclear weapon more than anything in the world, and I hope he sticks to his gun. Like, flatten them. We had an opportunity several months ago when this whole thing started to arm the civilians and cause an uproar and let them overthrow the government. And what did he do? He told them to stay home, and that was a huge mistake.
Yeah, that That was a huge tactical error in my
Yeah, that was a
opinion.
huge mistake. And that momentum, I think, sadly, right now is lost. So it's on us to do the dirty work now and take out the regime.
Well, the good news is there's been a leaked report that came out today that apparently like 92% of Iranians are pissed off at the Iranian government. So if we keep tipping and actually let the Mossad do it, because I don't trust our clandestine services any further than I can throw them anymore, we probably could get them armed and let them, because there have been some pockets of resistance. I saw stories leaking out from time to time about people shooting at checkpoints, etc. But the problem, and the thing that I think Americans take for granted is, one of the reasons they never invaded mainland America during World War II was because the Japanese emperor said we can't, because in America there's a gun behind every blade of grass. They don't have that there. And I think a lot of Americans are like, well, why don't they just deal with this themselves? Because they can't. What are they supposed to do? Wag a finger at them until they leave?
Well, when they deal with it themselves, 40,000 of them become murdered by the government.
Exactly. And that was one of the things that drove me the most crazy about all the people on our side that are like, this isn't our problem. The Iranians should be doing this. Yes, it is our problem, because it was our foreign policy shit with the British and what eventually became BP oil that led to this mess in the first place. That's nobody understands the history of what led to Iran becoming what Iran is, because nobody's taught history anymore. In the 50s, they elected a socialist prime minister. England was pissed about that. Great Britain was pissed about that because they had just sunk all kinds of infrastructure money into getting the oil out of the ground, and he was going to nationalize the oil industry. So Britain leaned on us to help us, to have them help, and us and them overthrow the guy, which led to the Shah originally being installed, and then everything else that came after. So a lot of this was our fault, and it's one of the reasons why when I tell people about this, everybody keeps acting like this is a new war. This is not a new war. These people have been at war with us, even in earnest, since 1979. But before then, they were still chanting in Persian, in Aramaic, or whatever language they use over there. First the Saturday people, then the Sunday people. They have wanted us dead for a very long time. And we don't seem to want to we don't seem to want to face that fact.
No, right. It's because it's a scary to realize that people want you dead and they mean it is a scary, scary realization. But once you get past the scary, then you can start to act.
Aggie, at first I thought you said that it doesn't even seem like he needs the teleprompter. Then I looked closer and realized you said he doesn't read the teleprompter, which made it even funnier because it's probably both accurate. Yeah, there was a lot of ad-libbing last night. Oof. Just So you remember that Logan Act thing that everybody says is worthless? Apparently there's a House Republicans that are pushing a Logan Act probe into Mandami, trying to meet with Iranian people.
Good. He should be denaturalized and deported for that alone.
Well, somebody else floated an interesting argument in an article that I saw the other day, and I can't remember where the article was, but I remember the gist of it, that the idea of having a communist in office is antithetical to everything within our Constitution, so he should be unseated, denaturalized, and deported. I'm like, I could support every single bit of that.
All the laws we have on the books to deal with the communists back from the McCarthy have never been repealed. That's all I'm gonna say.
BZ made a great point.
Wouldn't that be true of Prayapal also, if you're going to go there?
Oh, yeah. Jamila Prayapal. Yep. And Rashida Tlaib.
Yes.
Ilhan Omar.
I'm going to say, don't forget the brother fucker.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Like, we need somebody who has the balls to actually follow the law.
Yeah, well, we don't seem to want to do that.
No, we have to be nice. We have to play nice. No, we don't. They do not want to play nice. They have made that very clear, especially the socialists. They want to abolish the Senate, abolish the presidency and Supreme Court, and replace them with whatever will be submissive to the unicameral Congress that they think they will control. They will shred our Constitution. They will open our borders. They're not lying. They're not hiding. They're not playing games. We need to start taking them seriously.
Oh, yeah, they're showing us exactly who they are, and everybody's still like, oh, no, they don't really mean it. What I find is absolutely funny after being sick and being off for a while is trying to get back up to speed and realizing that everybody in the media is talking about things I was talking about a month ago before I got sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're a
'Cause
little slow on the uptake.
I started talking about the DSA platform as soon as the first guy won in New York. I'm like, have you guys seen this platform? This is some scary shit.
Yeah,
This
I've
is
written
nuts.
about it since Mamdani took office too.
And now everybody's talking about it. And I'm like, oh.
This is all stuff that 10, 15 years ago, if you said these things about their platform, you get screamed at. They're not communist. And the DSA leaders are out there saying, we want communism.
Yeah, our goal is communism.
How do you ignore that unless you want to ignore it?
Here's the thing. They're still saying they're not communist. How do I know? Because it happened in BZ's chat last night. 2 or 3 people, when we brought up the DSA, were like, you guys don't know what communism really means, do you? And I'm like, no, apparently you don't know.
Yeah, you guys have barely touched. You've barely touched on what the platform is. Allow me. Let's see. To abolish the presidency, abolish ICE, abolish the Senate, statehood for D.C., 2 automatic leftist Senate seats, but not if you abolish the sentence, comma, fucktards, abolish the Electoral College, abolish the Supreme Court. I guess court packing wasn't sufficient. Put the ICC, the International Criminal Court, over the U.S. with its jurisdiction, end all help and aid to Israel, legalize all migration, amnesty for all immigrants, end visa caps and quotas, build new public-owned social housing, clue, strictly regulate investment properties, universal rent control, free counsel for all tenants, abolish the police, abolish prisons, enact reparations to blacks, free abortions, enhance the trannies, expand the House of Representatives, ranked choice voting in all elections, period. Publicly finance all elections. That's not that bad. Public ownership of largest corporations, ownership of essential industries, very aggressive wealth tax, no national defense. Not kidding. It's there to see, kids, in black and white.
They have spelled it out.
Well, I think it was timing of it. I'm not exactly sure. It might have been just after the election, but there was a time when they were insisting Mamdani's not a communist.
No.
The very next day, he came out and suggested the government take over housing projects and turn them into communes.
The warmth of collectivism.
I mean, he's defying their defense of him.
Yep. Well, he's in power now. He doesn't have to lie. And he just
yesterday, didn't he propose free babysitters for New York citizens that want to go out on a date?
Right. Yep. And if you leave your kids with somebody Mamdani wants to watch them, you are stupid. You are stupid. Find a neighbor kid to leave them with, because they're going to come back trans and hating the Jews if you leave them with Mamdani.
Well, that's if they're still home when you get back.
That's true. If they don't just disappear them anyway. And he had the land. He and Sia Weaver, his anti-property socialist housing person, had a press conference. Evictions are violence. Now remember, you beat a guy to death on the subway. That's not violence. That's a social construct. But your landlord evicts you because you don't pay rent. That's violence.
Well, here's the part that Mamdani never really touches on about why he thinks people need free babysitters. You know what's happened in blue cities and blue states? They have taken what used to be a teenage job and now required so many different types of certification that you now have to basically have a degree in nannying to be somebody's fucking babysitter. So nobody can afford to pay them anymore. It's just like everything else. The reason there's a housing shortage predominantly wide open borders with everybody flooding through and too much restriction on who can build, where you can build, how you can build. And even if you get permitted, somebody's going to come in and do some sort of a land study and say, oh, there's a rare polywog here, so no, you can't build here after all.
Right.
So,
and as we learned in Minnesota, you try to do things by the book, they're going to be up your ass. Run a fraudulent daycare, here's millions of dollars for you to send to the terrorists back home. Have fun. The decent people are fed up with it, and they can't afford to do it.
Everybody thinks they spelled Learning Center wrong.
It's Leering.
They didn't. They were just teaching people how to glare. They were teaching. Just saying. I know that was bad, but it's okay. I don't know. But so here's an interesting thing that I've seen kind of floating around. Everybody thinks now that Graham is gone, that because he passed, his idea for Russian sanctions is probably going to get through. And there's even been some talk that because they're going to try to get a lot of the Save America Act funding stuff pushed through in a reconciliation package, that eventually they might be able to get that done too, and basically just browbeat everybody into doing it for Lindsay.
If they have to physically beat people to do it, fine, like get it passed. Well, there was something. Was it something JD Vance said that ticked me off too? Well, it wouldn't impact the midterms. Okay, so we shouldn't do it because it might not impact them, like change things for the midterms. What about 2028, 2030? Like, there's a future out there,
right? Well, and that's the thing that's always been different between the socialist crowd and the conservative crowd, because, and I've been saying this now for a long time. You guys realize how long it took for them to get a progressive income tax again? After the Civil War, we got rid of it. The Democrats kept coming back every 2 years until 1913, 1914, from the end of the Civil War until then. And then the Republicans thought they were going to be smart and say, well, we'll leave it up to the people. And then the Democrats did the same line that they still use today. You don't have to worry about this because it's a 2% tax on the top 1% of America, so it's not even going to bother you. So they got to, everybody started looking at the rich people going, ha, we're going to finally get them. And then there was enough of a vote to get it passed as a constitutional amendment, which is why we are now stuck with an income tax. I still, even though this is not juxtaposition, I'm going to put this out there. I still feel like that was a valid, I keep wanting to say Mamdani, but Mandela effect, because I remember when I first started doing this show, I had researched it and other people had even shown proof that income tax was unconstitutional. So at some point, something changed, because I even remember telling people that income tax was technically unconstitutional, and I had researched it and found the information. I can't find it anywhere now, though, because of that damn amendment.
They got to you.
So, yeah, something happened. Something happened. But, yeah, no. So, yeah. And the problem is they still use that today. Well, it's not really going to affect you. And then Joe Biden's like, our taxes are only going to impact people that are making $400,000 a year or more. Unless you sell something on Venmo or someplace for $600 or more, then we're going to come find you.
right?
Really? So you're going to tax me on something I already bought because I sold it? That's really? Okay, whatever. But yeah, we're the authoritarian ones. Yeah. I said this on BZ's show last night. I just wanted to be left alone. I had never had any inclination to do what I do for a living now. None. I just wanted to be left alone. And then I watched a business that I loved, that I poured blood, sweat, and tears into, crumble overnight because of Barack Hussein Obama. And I started getting politically involved and politically motivated, and the rest is history. I never wanted to do this. You can ask people when I first started doing this, when they would meet me in person. They were like, you are so much more boisterous on the radio and on broadcast than you are when we see you in person. I used to be an introvert. And the funny thing is, because of the work field that I went into, once I got out of security, there were 3 different times that I took a test that said whether you were an introvert, an extrovert, or some part in between. Every time I changed companies, I took the same test. When I first started working for Convergys, I was an introvert. When I went to work for Southwest Airlines, I was an introvert with some extroverted tendencies. By the time I took the same test when I went to work for OU, I was an extrovert with a side of introvert. Because I just got used to telling people how I felt and what I thought, and it didn't bother me anymore. And I still think that's probably part of the reason why I got divorced the second time.
I have always been a wilting introvert.
Really?
Somehow I'm not buying that.
Yeah. I'm feeling like I should have put my boots on before I came into the studio right now. Get a little deep in here. All right. So I know Amy's on a clock today, so we should probably start wrapping things up, because she's wanting to probably get there early.
Oh, I got a little bit of time yet, but yeah, I'm going, like I said, I'm going to go see the Odyssey.
Lucky you, said sarcastically. Glad it's not me. I'm surprised Brad isn't doing it. I was like, wait, you're reviewing it for Town Hall? Oh, I figured they would have roped Brad into doing it.
I want to hear it, Amy.
You will hear it. I promise you, I'm trying to go into it and to be. I don't know how successful I'm going to be, but I am going to try.
I want to believe.
I got too much apathy about this movie. I mean, it's like everybody's all worked up about it, and I can't give a damn. It's
well, a year ago, if you had told me Nolan and the Odyssey, I would have been there. And the only reason I didn't buy a ticket a year ago is because I know me and I know my life, and something's going to go tits up if I plan that far ahead. So, but the whole thing has just gotten progressively, no pun intended, worse as we've gotten closer to the release date. And now it's kind of like I'm going to see the train wreck.
Interstellar, great. Dunkirk, great. Enjoyed them both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, I mean, it was good. But yeah,
Was that Heath Ledger?
Yes, that was Heath Ledger's Joker. He won an Oscar posthumously for that.
Yeah.
Well, I just love how all the arguments that are against it, they automatically gets labeled as MAGA. You can't handle a black woman in the role of Athena. It's like, well, no, I can't handle the fact that in the written work they describe her as fair-skinned, blonde. I mean, it's just you're defying the source material. It's not a MAGA DEI argument.
I can even get past the color thing. What I can't get past is this supposedly being the face that launched 1,000 ships, and it looks like Whoopi Goldberg had a baby.
And I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I just can't buy Elliot Page as a warrior.
I'd forgotten about that. Oh my God.
Did you? They keep getting copyright struck, but did you see the footage of her running in the armor from the movie? It is so
a
bad.
5'5" tranny troll. Nothing says warrior like that.
Right.
I look at that kind of stuff and it's just like there's no way I'm going to spend 3 hours watching something I have no care for.
Yeah,
right
I mean,
now. I'm not against or for it, and the one thing that's always cracked me up though, and this goes back to my days of being a movie reviewer. That's where I cut my teeth. There's always a complaint when you come out critical against some of the releases. Who the hell's this guy? He's never made movies. He's a son of a bitch. The exact same studio, if I gave it a rave review, would put 5 stars next to my name on their movie poster. Same guy who doesn't know anything about movies. And now they're saying, you can't complain about a movie you haven't seen. You have to go watch it first. It's like,
well, you can't complain about cops if you haven't been a cop.
That's compulsory viewing for one. And two, you're not bitching about the people that are raving about the movie who haven't seen it. And that's where the hypocrisy all comes. If you're, pimping them properly, it's all good.
Right.
But if you criticize it, no, you have to sit and watch it first. It's like, well, the whole point of criticizing is so I don't spend my money on your product. Now you're mandating it. It doesn't quite work that way.
Right. And I've touched on this point before, but a warrior story about a man who comes home to his family, that is from one of the foundational texts of Western literature. That is fertile ground to get audiences from red states to go see your movie. And what do? They don't put a single Greek person in it. They shoehorn Ellen Page into it, and they make Lupita Nyong'o Helen of Troy, and her sister Clytemnestra, which in and of itself, she's supposed to be the most uniquely beautiful woman in the world, but she's played by the same actress. Okay, I'm even willing to overlook that. The problem is the hypocrisy. Moana is 10 years old, just as made up a story as the Odyssey. But Variety wrote this breathless piece about how we were so careful about making sure we respected Polynesian culture in this film and that representation was proper on screen. Bitch, where the fuck were the Greeks and why does Greek culture not matter? Well, I get it because it's Western civilization. You guys hate that, but the hypocrisy is always.
Yeah,
the
what
point.
about what happened?
by their own definition.
What happened? Yeah, what happened to the whole "my culture is not your costume" thing?
Yeah.
Where'd
That's
that go?
only.
Where'd that go? Confused. All right.
Oh, so Aggie just gave me a heads up on that too. I will watch for that. Like I said, the movie starts in about an hour. It's 5 minutes from my house. I don't feel like we have to like cut and run right this second. I'll be fine. But I will let you know. My review will drop tomorrow. There may even be a live drunk review on Twitter later on, depending on how much I have to drink. Like I said, I'm getting a ride there. I'm taking an Uber home. There's gonna be more than one beverage.
So I feel like we got to talk about this, and then we'll start making the rounds. Because I got to give credit where credit is due. So the New York Post piece that came out on the 14th about the whole stop eating lettuce thing, one of our very own Alan Ray, with probably one of the most underrated tweets or posts I've ever seen, put this out earlier today. It hasn't gone anywhere yet. I hear they're calling people who get the explosive diarrhea "quote unquote" salad shooters. That is an underrated post. Underrated post.
I'm gonna go find that one now and just repost it.
Underrated post. That's awesome. But yeah, I think it's kind of interesting though, and I wonder if it's some form of eco-terrorism again, because now that we're trying to eat healthier in America, we've got a guy like Bobby Kennedy who's like, yeah, you need to eat more vegetables, you need to do this, you need to do that. Now all of a sudden lettuce is trying to kill us again. I will say this, my Oreos have never tried to kill me before.
Neither has rum. So,
well, at least you didn't get the salad bag with the frog in it.
Yeah, I just.
Oh, but frogs are cute.
I mean,
dead.
The other thing is when this first broke and everybody's like, it's all Taco Bell's fault. Look, if you're eating a Taco Bell and you don't expect to not need a colonic afterwards, you probably shouldn't be eating at Taco Bell.
It is the colonic. It is the colonic.
That's where I go for all my health food.
I mean, well, yeah. Well, first of all, how many things in that you can get from Taco Bell actually have lettuce in them? I think there's like 4.
Not only that, but their
I don't know. I don't eat it.
Beef is freeze dried. Comes in a bag.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of fast food's gone that way. Hell, I remember years ago when everybody was starting to do like the Applebee's thing and the Chili's thing, and everybody was like, "Oh, this is so awesome!" And then it all got turned over to Cisco, and it's all just basically eat and eat, and everybody's like,
"Yeah, it's disgusting."
Yeah, when I was at Budweiser serving their draft lines, I had to move a bag of something that was on a keg, and I was like, "What is this?" Like tiny brown pellets. It was almost like sand, and then I flipped the bag over. Taco beef.
Sand?
Really? Okay.
Sand?
Oh, when it's dehydrated, yeah. That absolutely makes sense.
Look like mulch.
No, that's appetizing.
Jesu Christi.
Jesus wept. Yes, exactly.
So I guess I'm going to circle back around to this for a second, because even though the speech was not very good last night, he did make some very key points, and I am a firm believer now that, especially now that Nancy Pelosi was caught on video not once but twice saying that what happened on January 6th was basically her fault. I think she let it happen. I think she let it happen on purpose.
Oh, I've come around to the FBI was behind that bullshit.
Oh, so did I.
Like
as soon as and I talked about this earlier, because everybody's like, they should go after Jack Smith for perjury. They can't, because they didn't ask him the right question. But they did with the guy with the J6 stuff, because when he said, I can neither confirm nor deny the number of FBI agents that may or may not have been in the crowd, they then said, well, how about informants? And again, he said, I can neither confirm or deny. So, yeah. And then eventually he did throw out a number. But he was like, but we didn't have any agents in the field.
125.
Yeah. But yeah, we didn't have any agents in the field. But here's the thing that nobody talks about with confidential informants, and BZ will probably back me up on this. The thing about confidential informants, it usually means you have something on them that if you don't deliver, they know where they're going. And there are now all kinds of reports of people within the FBI being told by the higher ups to lean really, really hard on their confidential informant to get material. So I guarantee you, a lot of guys went, you're either going to do this or you're going to go here.
And or they're what? Paid.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like we found out with what was it? Southern Poverty Law Center, who were paying white supremacists to generate hate. But it was it was so they could do investigative journalism against the hate. But yeah, you're paying the white supremacists. What did you think was going to happen?
Ray Epps video fomenting. Ray Epps, almost zero consequences. I can't understand why.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I mean, think about that from a logical perspective. A grandma who basically followed a cop in who waved her through got thrown in jail for 24 months before somebody finally got her out. And then Ray Epps, they're just like, nothing to see here. No, we don't even
Go move along now.
Well, look at what the selective arrest that they made too, where Steve Baker from the Blaze at the time got arrested because he was recording inside the rotunda, but he walked through the doors after they were opened by security guards. There's a video, I think, at the New Yorker. One of their reporters streamed while he was breaking in through a window with other rioters, like had the camera right over the shoulder of the guy in front of him that broke through, and they show him stepping through and breaking into the Capitol. He's fine though, because he's pro-Democrat. So it's
and 40 to 60 of those people didn't have a prelim for 3 years. They were left to rot in a gulag. Most of them were in solitary confinement, not having used violence. And you complain about us and not the Democrats. That's when I heard that, no prelims. They just sat, they just rotted. They were in solitary. This is the USSR.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I'm circling back a little bit to the whole socialist conversation we had earlier. When they say they want to abolish prison, they mean for criminals. They don't mean for you. I wrote about Angela Davis, who is the mother of the abolish prison movement, a left-wing terrorist who bought a shotgun that was later strapped to the head of a judge who died because her left-wing comrades took over his courtroom to get someone's brother free. When she was asked by communist detractors to help get them out of prison, she said, nope, they deserve to be there. They're not abolishing prisons for everyone. They're abolishing prisons for their friends.
All right, so one last story, and then we'll start everybody tells their favorite thing they've either written about or talked about this week. Is this one, and this again is very telling. 100 Democrats voted against funding Israel yesterday. 100. Not just, not sending them, weapons. The funding that they tried to take away was even the funding for their Iron Dome, which means if they don't have that, Israel's gone.
Which is what they want.
Hey, idiots, do you know where our intelligence comes from in the Middle East?
From Israel.
Yeah, I'm sure it comes from Oman, right? Or Syria. Syria's been great about giving us information.
Well, according to J.D. Vance, Qatar's awesome.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Right. I would like to remind our friends that there was just a cruise that left Athens on July 5th that was barred from stopping in both Turkey and Egypt because it was a gay cruise.
I had so much fun covering that story.
Oh, that was so much. I covered that too.
I love how that was.
Because I think I mentioned that. Yeah, they blamed it on Trump because he's allowed this homophobia to be emboldened in the world. No, they're Muslim countries. They pretty much hate you, and they've hated you for 1,400 years, and they're going to hate you long after Trump is gone. Like I said before, I went to Egypt. When we booked our flights on Delta and we put our passports in, it said, Egypt will not allow you to enter the country if you have a transgender, non-binary gender marker on your passport. So make sure your passport says you were either a man or a woman.
Yeah.
But the one place they could have gone and had a great time was the one place that recognizes pride. And that was Tel Aviv. I noticed they didn't.
They did, because Israel's terrible. But yeah, the funny thing is, You can yell free Palestine all you want from America. If you're gay and you try to yell it in an Islamic country, it's free Palestine. Splat.
You're
Mhm.
free fall to speak that way.
It's just I don't know. These people are they have lost all touch with reality. And I talked about this with BZ last night. You know, we keep talking about a national divorce. I think one has technically already occurred. The difference is we have people that are now divorced from reality and people that are still trying to fight so people see reality, because they don't see reality at all anymore. They don't see Islam as a problem. They don't see Iran as a problem. They see Israel as the problem. They see people that want freedom as a problem. And the DSA is flat out telling you that those of us that want freedom are the problem, and they're trying to revamp everything about the country to make sure that we can't do that. And you're right. They don't want to get rid of prisons for political dissidents. They don't want to get rid of prisons for people that disagree with them. They just want to get rid of prisons for actual criminals.
Yep. And real quick, CENTCOM posted a little bit ago that they launched another round of strikes at Iran at 3 p.m. Eastern time.
Oh, so again, it is Warthog Day in Tehran again.
We kill them all, as my boss said.
Yep.
It's a Kurt Schlichter dystopian world.
Fun times. I mean, I'm just glad they're still going at it. I honestly, I still don't think they're doing enough. I know they're
No, I don't think they are either. But
fraction.
No.
But I also, again, understand why they are doing what they're doing in the fashion that they're doing it. And I've tried to explain this before. We have built a world ever since World War II where we have to fight with one hand on the trigger and the other hand on the scales of the world economy that we rebuilt and tied together to try to keep from ever having a World War III, which is why everything since the Korean War has been either fought to a standstill or withdrawal. The problem is, and we ran into this with Japan, is when you have people who ideologically will not give up until they've either killed you or you've killed them, that none of the logic stuff matters. And I think that's why Trump finally admitted late last week, these people are knucking futs. I mean, he didn't say it exactly that way, but he might as well have. Because everybody's like, well, up until 5 minutes ago, you were saying they were awesome and that you felt like you could work with them. And he's like, yeah, I got to know them. They're nuts. And he's not wrong. They're insane. They want the thing they call a caliphate is basically bathing the entire world with blood so their version of the Messiah can come back. That's what they want. Easiest way for them to do that? Nuclear weapons. That's why they keep saying we don't really want nuclear weapons. But if they didn't, they wouldn't be enriching past a certain point, because you don't need the same amount of enrichment to use it for energy as you do everything else. But anyway, we should probably start wrapping up. So we'll let Amy go first, so that way I know for sure she makes it to the movie on time. What's your favorite story this week?
Okay, you're going to indulge me for a second here, because this is all stuff that broke today from Wisconsin. Earlier in the week, Sarah Rodriguez, who is the current lieutenant governor, announced that she had fired her campaign manager because of misrepresentation or misreporting on campaign's finance reports, the last round of which were due on the 15th. Turns out Sarah Rodriguez's campaign is pretty much broke. And for 6 months, Sarah Rodriguez, who wanted to be our governor, didn't know this. Despite that, she held a press conference on Monday, said, no, this is what leadership looks like. I'm not dropping out of the race. 9:47 a.m. this morning, she announced she was, in fact, dropping out of the race. And with her, yes, I know. Wait. It gets even better. The front runners in the Democratic primary right now are Francesca Hong, the Democratic Socialist, Kelda Royce, who's a Madison radical who nobody in Wisconsin even seems to know, Mandela Barnes, who was Governor Tony Evers' first lieutenant governor when he won back in 2018, a guy whose name, his last name is Brennan. I don't even know what his first name is. That's how unimpressive his campaign is. He's electable according to a conservative that I follow here in Wisconsin, but he's a white guy, so the Democrats aren't going to touch him. And then the last nominee was Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley. Crowley dropped out last week, endorsed Sarah Rodriguez, who dropped out today. The Wisconsin Democrats are running around with their hair on fire because they know Francesca Hong, who only has about $1 million in her campaign, give or take. Like, she doesn't have a lot of campaign money, let's put it that way, is the front runner. They know she will not beat Tom Tiffany in the general election. They want to get her out. So now the Democrats are trying to get David Crowley, the Milwaukee County executive, to get back into the race and get Tony Evers to endorse him. Tony Evers did not endorse his former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes or his current Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez because he Hates them. He hates both of them. And I'm just enjoying every second of this because it couldn't happen to a better bunch of assholes. Will David Crowley get back into the race? Don't know yet. Will it make a difference? No, because as somebody who has grown up in Milwaukee County her entire life, everybody outside of Milwaukee County and Dane County hate us because they equate Milwaukee County with the city of Milwaukee, and they're not wrong. Milwaukee takes their tax dollars, especially MPS, where black kids test at the bottom nationally. It's a city full of crime where the Common Council's solution to the shootings downtown was to ban food trucks after 10 p.m. That's been suspended. That's going to court right now. You get out of Milwaukee County, even in the bluer areas of Wisconsin, they hate Milwaukee. They twice rejected our past mayor, Tom Barrett, when he ran for governor. David Crowley, the county is a shit show. It has $163 million deficit through 2031, including a $50 million budget deficit for last year. And at the beginning of this year, it turned out Crowley's team didn't renew the contract with United Healthcare, which meant every county employee, their dependents, and every retiree, including my mother, went for months without insurance coverage. And United Healthcare couldn't come back and say, we're not covering that because you didn't have a contract with us. Crowley's not going to win. Tom Tiffany has $10 million in fundraising and $3 million cash on hand. It's over for the Wisconsin Dems. And I wrote about all of that today at Town Hall. The Sarah Rodriguez story dropped earlier. The Wis Dem panic story drops in a little while. You can go. That is my favorite story of the week because the Wisconsin Democrats imploded today. And they are done. And their primary isn't even until August 11th.
Well, I know you were really worried about that.
Say that again?
Where's David Clark when we need him?
He moved out west because he's smart.
Good man.
And believe me, I voted for him whenever he was on the ballot as sheriff. I crossed over and voted on the Democrat side because he always ran as a Democrat. Toying with the idea of crossing over and voting the Democrat primary on the 11th just to make sure that Francesca Hong gets dragged across that line so she gets her ass kicked by Tom Tiffany in the general because she will lose. Internal polls show both of the frontrunners losing to Tiffany.
I'm just loving the fact
That's
that
where I'm at.
a candidate was unaware that they were out of money and then turns around and says, this is what leadership looks like.
Mm-hmm. Well, she was very clear at the beginning of her campaign. If she won, she was going to write the state's biennial budget behind a curtain.
Yeah.
And she was another one of those, I'm going to, block ICE from operating state. Whatever her plan was for immigration, it was so bad that Tony Evers even came out and said, I probably wouldn't do that. And Tony Evers is the guy that gave us the phrase inseminated persons. So
California's Nick Shirley law.
I feel like this is your state's version of Kamala Harris, blew through billions, over $1 billion in a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't even really of it.
Well, she apparently owes a lot to vendors. She says she was making $1 million ad buy. She didn't even have $1 million in the campaign covers. And she never looked at her campaign funds for 6 months.
Oof. Yeah, that's leadership.
It's bad. It's
That's
bad.
leadership, folks.
It's bad. And I am enjoying every minute. I'm going to eat that popcorn tonight and laugh at the
Nice.
wisdom.
While you're
thank you so
drinking
much
and
for having
regretting
me.
your life choices for signing up to review this movie for Town Hall. Anyway, all right, Brad, what do you got for us, sir? Because if I know you probably got to finish another podcast.
Let's see. I don't know. I got a couple places I can go. Well, first off, there was Nina Totenberg, when she had that massive screw up over at NPR a couple weeks ago. I was researching something else and came across no fewer than half a dozen other corrections that NPR has had to issue for her for the last couple of weeks. That was amusing. But my big one, I guess, would be that the Democrats are once again trying to make an appeal to men because they still haven't figured out how to appeal to men, apparently. And
Well, yeah. I mean, it's hard to appeal to masculinity when everybody on your side keeps putting trannies in leading roles.
Well, they had this big piece in the Atlantic about this, and they highlighted like 3 or 4 manly men that are running on the campaign trail. Sound like legitimate guys. One's a cop, one's former Army Ranger, stuff like this. But they treat these guys like anomalies. It's like, no, we got a couple. We can go find some. And even the reporter at the Atlantic had to admit that they didn't really hone in on what it takes to be a guy, because he says, I got a call from a party operative who pitched the story on Democrats' effort to win back the manosphere. Right there, when you're using that kind of language, you have no clue what you're talking about. But he says he goes through a list of like half a dozen candidates, and they say that these guys are all engaging culturally in male spaces.
No man actually, like no real man actually talks like that.
If you say those kind of words when you're in like a bourbon bar, you're either going to get thrown on your ass on the sidewalk, or you're going to be sitting in a corner by yourself sipping on a mango seltzer. Manosphere. That's
another Shirley Temple, please.
Yeah, fun times.
Do you have something that doesn't tickle my nose so much? Because I'm doing a piece on manhood.
Yeah, I think the funniest thing that has emerged from me with this whole Odyssey story was the transgender leading male actor being focused or being featured on sports magazines about masculinity.
Yes, men's health.
Men's health, really?
In the workout program.
Last I checked, nobody without a prostate should be talking about men's health.
Right. Well, she said that the cis heteronormative gender binary is a social construct, and her proof of this is bonobo monkeys. So sure, the gender binary isn't real, says the person who insists I call her a man.
Yeah, not happening.
No.
All right, BZ, what do you got for us?
Well, this is really funny. I put this into the category of, hey, you did this shit to yourself. I lived in the forest in the Sierra Nevada mountains for 28 years in Ontario, who loves everyone. We love the environment. We love everything, is starting all of the wildfires that are blowing everything because they, like all the people in the rest of California, have refused to, let's see, one, controlled burns, not going to do it. Forest thinning and pruning, nope, not going to do it. Timber harvesting, no, wouldn't think of it. Replanting and regeneration, no, not going to happen. So all the things that they didn't want to happen are happening. Okay, so say goodbye to fucking millions and millions of little animals. Say goodbye to hundreds of thousands of mammals. Say goodbye to your air as all those wildfires are spewing geometric metric tons of smoke into the air. All you leftists in California and Ontario, fuck you. How about that?
You should really start telling people how you actually feel.
I know. I'm just a wilted introvert. Thank you.
You need to take a different test.
Right? Yeah, I don't think your test was accurate, my friend. All right, so my favorite story is one I actually haven't written about yet, but I probably will put it out as a Rick's rant sometime over the weekend, because the lovely little quaint, picturesque small town that I live just a couple miles south of has been featured all over Oklahoma news this week, because after a new person got elected to city council, they did everything they could to try to deal with all kinds of irregularities inside of the city council, and were still involved and threatened and everything else. So they eventually brought in Cindy Bird to do an audit. And they have discovered that in the last 4 years, which is the only records they had access to, that in a town with less than 700 people, a total of $2.25 million is now unaccounted for and believed to have been used by the tiny little town's clerk to do things like pay their mortgage, take their dog to the vet, so many other different things. And I just want to point out, this is happening in a Republican state. So the idea that fraud gives a damn about the letter behind your name is bullshit. We just need to get serious about dealing with the fraud, realizing that, just as I pointed out earlier today, the fraud is endemic in our system. The cheating is endemic in our system. Hell, politics as a whole, for pretty much the entirety of its existence, cheating has been a feature, not a bug. So if we're going to finally do something about it, we need to come to terms with that and actually do something about it. And then we need to clean up all the fraud, because that means state money is being abused, federal money is being abused, local money is being abused, and everybody wonders why we can't afford anything anymore. I've said this before. If they would start the process of clawing back even the stuff that they've been able to find so far from our federal government and just kept clawing back everything that they've been able to find through fraud, within the next 3 to 5 years, we probably wouldn't have a national debt anymore, much less a national deficit. It's insane the amount of fraud that has been found just when we just barely started looking. We've scratched the surface and found millions and millions and billions of dollars worth of fraud, to the point where we're now, in the words of politicians, starting to talk about what they consider serious money, because to them, millions of dollars isn't serious money. But they will tell you, once you can scrape together $1 billion or so, now we're talking money. Now we're talking about billions of dollars worth of fraud nationwide. And again,
well, the Democrats aren't even serious about this, because Nick Shirley was just on the Hill and they were barking at him that he's only investigating this stuff to get clicks. He's finding hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud in one city at a time. That's severe. No, you just want traffic on your website.
And then the other one that I may or may not write a piece about, their Persistence put out a post today about an area, I believe it was, I know he said Pennsylvania, but I didn't see exactly where they found a homeless shelter that had 500 registered voters, only has 100 beds.
Right. Well, people can use that as an address. No, not when they're not staying there.
Yeah, this is not general delivery from the post office, folks. If you're not staying there, it's not your address. Anyway, we should probably start the process to get out of here, because I know Amy's going to want to start drinking soon. Where can folks find you, Amy, so you can be the first one to duck out?
You can find me on Twitter at Ranty Amy Curtis or Town Hall. I write a lot of stuff. Beezy, you'll be sad to know I only wrote 19 stories today. I have missed my goal, but I think I was well over 20 for the rest of the week, and I have a couple in the hopper. Obviously, check my Odyssey review. That'll drop. It'll publish tomorrow morning. I'm going to try to write it tonight. Depends on how sober I am. And then I have some stuff sitting in the hopper for Sunday as well. But check it out. And then thank you guys for having me. It's always so much fun. I will let you know how the Odyssey goes. I'm going to hop off so I can get to the theater. Bye, everybody.
All right. Remember, at Ranty Amy Curtis on X, and go find your book on Amazon.
Oh, yes, my book. Yes, Gaslight by Amy Curtis. Please buy my book. And if you know somebody who does a publishing, send them my way, because I've got more ideas I'd love to talk about and I'd love to get an advance on. Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
All right. And bye to Amy. Brad, where can folks find you?
I am daily over at townhall.com with my media column. Also pretty much daily at Red State, and I've got a podcast there called Liable Sources as well. And right here at KLRN. Thursday nights, I'm doing entertainment shows, either with Paul Young and or Orty, our resident Amish individual. And Tuesday evenings with Aggie Rican at 8:30 on the Cocktail Lounge, our fun news item. And also go over to Jitter, where I harass journalists on the regular. My handle there is at Martini Shark.
All right, and thank you for joining us today, Brad. I'm going to move you off stage so you can go do whatever you've got going on next. And BZ, where can folks find you, my friend?
I am BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guiding you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, globalist lies, deceit, and betrayal. I feature bombastic shenanigans on Tuesday and Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern on the SHR Media Network, and also right here, friends, right here on KLRN, courtesy of Rowdy Rick Robinson. Thank you, sir. You can't see me, but I'm saluting. Salute!
Yeah, you and your floating head of doom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this particular episode of the Weekend News Roundup. I want to thank everybody who's taken the time to hang out with us today. Looks like between the two shows, we got pretty close to 300, which for midday isn't terrible. So thank you very much for that. My final thought for the day is the ironic fact that everybody's favorite ballad fairy probably sounded a lot like this after all. You've been here 4 hours. You're gone now. My name is Rick Robinson. This has been the Weekend News Roundup, live right here on KLRNradio.com and featured on Digital Beacon US News. I'll be back later tonight with the lovely Aggie Rican, who's been hanging out in our chat, but she's now having to go by Aggie the Barkeep because somebody jacked her damn account and X won't help her get it back. That's a crime against humanity, y'all. That is a crime against humanity. I'll be back later tonight, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, with the lovely Aggie on He Said, She Said. Not sure what we're talking about yet, but once I go charge my phone, we'll go find out. Bye, everybody. Say goodnight, Gracie.